welcome everybody to come down. And just as I do many times, take a little point of personal privilege. There's a big event going on in Nashville. I do apologize that we have the meeting tonight, but we had publicly noticed it, and by law we had to have the meeting. And so I want to apologize for any crowds or traffic, but I did wear my blue tie to profess my love for the Titans. So, but I do want to thank everybody for coming down in the crowds, and I do apologize. Once we notice a meeting, by law we have to have it. So let's start on the agenda. First would be the adoption of the agenda, and commissioners, the agenda was sent to you, mailed to you prior to the meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? It's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Now we are on to item C, which is the approval of the April 11th, 2019 minutes. Those were also mailed to you prior to the meeting. Is there any questions, edits, additions, or is there a motion to approve the minutes? There's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the minutes are adopted. Now we're on to the recognition of the council members, and we call in the order that we see you come in. And so first on my list was Council Lady Brenda Haywood. Do you want to go now, or you'll wait? Okay, thank you, Council Lady. Just want to make sure we give you a chance. And then I saw Councilman Anthony Davis. Where'd Anthony go? Councilman, you want to come on up? Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just briefly, wanted to speak on the UZO expansion that we have, and I think it's on consent. But really excited about that. I think it's time we advanced it a little further on the East Nashville side. If you look at the map, I know it goes a little further, I believe, on the west side. My goal is, or my thought is, I think it eventually needs to get to Briley Parkway at least, and that may be a good stopping point. What we're doing with this expansion is a good bit more of Gallatin up to Trinity, and then we're able to get some of Trinity Lane, and then, of course, the residential parcels in between. But I think it's a good thing, and I really encourage you to vote for it and send that to us with the UZO expansion. Second, I wanted to mention the tree ordinance. I know we're deferring, I believe, a couple more meetings. We're just kind of shaking out the last final things on that due to time constraints and the fact that I think we've circled the wagons. I think this should be the last deferral, and appreciate you guys sending that up to us the next time we have it. I know planning's working on their amendment, and once we have that amendment, if we need to do further amendments at council, we will, but we'd like to have that at the next time it comes in front of you. Thank you.
And so the first item was item 25, just so everybody knows that you discussed. Okay, cool. Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate you coming down. Next, I saw Councilman Larry Hager. Where's Councilman Hager? Oh, yeah, we'll come back to you. Is that okay? All right. Council Lady Mina Johnson, you want to go next? Come on up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Councilmember Mina Johnson. I am speaking on item 11, 2019 S043-001, Highland View. This is not my district, but my many constituents of mine will be heavily impacted by this development if and when it is approved. So that's why I just wanted to express my opinion on this subdivision approval. Besides, this is a subdivision regulation, so it will not come to council. So your decision is the final decision. And I'm sure many of you are there 2 years ago when you disapproved this subdivision regulation based on the variance, which is from Knob Road to the circle, and then second circle, the last circle. The longest one extended to about more than 2,000 feet, and which is fire hazard. So based on that, 2 years ago, Commissioner disapproved this subdivision regulation. However, this time, because this property owner was able to acquire one property, so therefore there's potentially connect north side road to existing street called Watts Lane. But as I was reading the condition, I am not sure if entirely the Watts Lane will be connected, because one of the conditions does not specify Watts Lane will need to be widened than current existing average width of 18 feet. So one of the conditions is Watts Lane to be widened. However, if you read the condition very, very carefully, it says, prior to final plat approval, bond or improve Watts Lane from the terminal of this development to Charlotte Pike. So it does not say specifically this north side of the extension to be connected to Watts Lane. Most scary word in this condition is bond. So what if this developer just bond and everybody or the commissioner assume this north side of the street will be connected, therefore there's no reason for give the variance. But what if the bond was posted, but nobody constructed the extension of the north side of the street to connect to the Watts Lane? So that will create 42 subdivisions, only one way in, one way out, extending more than 2,000 feet. So I would like you to really consider that condition. So please do not approve on the assumption maybe it may be connected, because this condition does not specify that. Also, another thing I would like to remind you is one of the other connection, stormwater protection plan. Any developer will know Metro has really good stormwater regulation to have a stormwater detention, rain garden, and French drain, whatever the tool might be. And those are to capture first 1 inch of storm water. But what is happened during the construction? Nothing. During the construction, we are really grossly lacking how to protect adjacent neighbor from runoff stormwater with mud and everything. Some grading permit will have more detailed plan in order for the building permit to be permitted. However, this subdivision regulation does not require grading permit when each individual getting ready to build the house. So one of the conditions, it says, stormwater protection plan. Upon the completion of the construction, no lot shall be graded or cleared. So that is good, because assuming subdivision regulation, the first stage is create the inner private street. So in that stage, the developer or whomever take up on this project will have to follow strict grading permit. So adjacent neighbor will have some kind of protection. However, purchaser of each lot must submit an infill stormwater management plan. So that does not require grading permit. Rather, they have to submit infill subdivision regulation. It does not require any certain sets of stormwater management before, after the construction. Especially before the construction, they don't even ask what kind of protection would be appropriate. If you do the development on top of the hill and problematic soil, you have to be very, very careful what kind of condition this development have to follow. So this is, again, subdivision regulation. What you will be approving is just creation of the plot. So this creation of the plot, one, let me remind you, may or may not have another access point connected to the Charlotte via Watts Lane, because it's one of the conditions is a bond or enlargement. And another condition, once you approve the plot, each and every single lot will be developed based on infill development regulation. That infill development regulation on the stormwater management plan is so weak, to say the least. So before you approve, please hear all the neighbors and consider what kind of adverse effect this development may create, especially on the hill, on the problematic soil. The landslide had happened. So just please be careful before approve it. And my preference is not to approve it, but work with the developer, come up with SP so we can place more condition before, after, during the construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Hager, we'll come back to you.
Good evening. Thank y'all for letting me be here today, and appreciate y'all's service.
Appreciate you coming down.
I almost had to take Briley Parkway to get over here from 2nd Avenue by the courthouse, so it was difficult to get here. I've got number 31 and 32 on the docket. This is an area in Old Hickory called Berryville. A lot of people don't know where it's at, but it's a very old subdivision. And the present zoning on it is R8. And what we're proposing is to do an RS 7.5 to prevent gentrification. We've had meetings about this. Most of the residents do not want the two tall skinnies on the properties around them. So I have a petition here, if I can submit that as an exhibit.
Yeah, give it to Lisa for the record. Thank you, Councilman.
And there's about 38 signatures on there as well. The other bill, which is number 32 on your agenda, is the contextual overlay. We talked about that, and most of them wanted the contextual overlay to restrict the height, setback lines, and things of that nature on these houses. There's been 3 people that showed up. I've agreed to exempt about 3 properties out of that. One of them is going to stay here. A gentleman here with Rhythm Building has 2 lots there that I agreed to take out of the R8 zoning, but he indicated he had some other interest in some properties over there, but he hadn't bought them yet. So I guess if he wants to argue against this, he's the only one here, so I'll stay until the bitter end.
And Councilman, do you have the addresses for the record?
Yes.
If you could read those into the record, that'd be great.
4318 Woods Street, 4332 Wood Street, 4334 Wood Street, 4252 and 54 Woods. 4222 on Old Hickory Boulevard. Gentleman was here, but he's already pulled his building permit, so I told him that was a pretty moot issue. These that I'm taking out will be taken out of the RS number 31, but I allow the contextual overlay to stay in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Next was Councilman Scott Davis. You want to go now, or come on up if you'd like? Appreciate you coming down.
Of course I want to go now. Got to finish decorating, ready for my daughter's senior prom, and plus, Avengers comes out today. Team Captain Marvel over here, by the way. All right. I am here for 2 cases. Number 25, my colleague and dear friend for the last 20 years, Anthony Davis, said everything. We're in support, and I want to thank the staff for their hard work. And I especially want to be on the record, even though I can't control this, but I would like my other 10 colleagues in here to hear this. look at the staff members that are here, not just with the planning, but with codes and with water. 4:30 during the busiest week ever in Nashville, and hopefully some of that tax revenue make this week can trickle down, and not how Ronald Reagan wanted to trickle down, but to get some raises and get some additional support for more studies and things that the planning staff does well. So this is a prime example, and whatever I can do to help, that's fine. Even though sometimes we disagree, I do not ever disagree on how hard the staff works. Okay. Now on to the reason why I'm here the most is number 13. You know, as a council person, you try hard not to show favoritism, even to those constituents who you love. I love all my constituents, but some I love more than others. And some days I love some a little bit less, but I still love them. But even those that you love the most, you have to make them follow the rules. If one child that doesn't give you less, if you love all your children, but if one child makes a lower grade, even though they don't usually make a lower grade, you still have to discipline them and give them extra tutoring and take away privileges like television and stuff like that. Even a great developer like this one doing this project that was on consent before, planning staff worked hard, they approved it, just an R6A, very simple. Lot is, in the past, is overgrown, had a crazy house on it. However, you know, due to some timing and the person having a newborn baby, was not able to attend the neighborhood association meeting. So I deferred it. I didn't want to. It's a great project. Everyone loved it, and no opposition here. But I had to do it anyway because, you know, you got to make them follow the rules. Even though it's not a written rule, you know, it's one I believe in. And so that's why this bill is here now, is deferred twice. I want to thank the applicant for doing it. But by doing that, I am in support and of number 13. The best thing about this is that he's renovating the front house and he's marketing it at a very affordable rate. Now, between $250 and $275 may not be affordable for most of us, but in a neighborhood where tall skinnies are going between $350 and $400 and bigger homes in the $600 mark, $250 is not bad, especially for the quality and the workmanship of this builder. And the builder lives 2 blocks from this. So it is a labor of love, and even though the builder is a very good neighbor, he understood why I made him go and talk to the neighbors and made him go to another neighborhood association meeting till we got everything correct with the people that we live around. And I'm in support, and please move this forward. Thank you. Happy draft day.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate you coming down. Next, Councilor Roberts.
I would actually like to go last, please.
Yes, ma'am.
After my constituents talk.
What, during the item? Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate it. And then I saw Councilman Jeff Syracuse come. Oh, okay. I don't think that there are any other council members. We'll make sure we get everybody. Nothing worse than an angry council member. Okay. All right. So we're on to, seeing no other council members wishing to speak, we're on to item E, which is items for deferral withdrawal. Lisa.
The following items are for deferral. Item number 2, 2018Z010TX001. Staff recommendation is to defer to June 13th. Item 3A and 3B, 2019 CP005001 and 2019 Z004PR001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 23rd. Item number 5 on page 5, 2018 SP 092002. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 6 on page 6, 2018 SP 057001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 7, 2019 SP 006001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 8, 2019 SP 020001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 9, 2019 S 032001. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Item number 10, 2019 S 039001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 14 on page 7 of your agenda, 2019 Z 044PR 001. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Item number 16, 2019 SP 010001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 20 on page 8 of your agenda, 2019 HP 001001. Staff recommendation is to defer to June 27th. Item number 21, 2018 Z 038PR 001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. Item number 22 on page 9 of your agenda, 2018 Z 039PR 001. Staff recommendation is to defer to May 9th. That's it.
All right, thank you, Lisa. So the items, Commissioner, the items for defer or withdraw we'll go through the list, make sure I'm correct, Lisa, okay? Items 2, 3A, 3B, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 16, 20, 21, and 22. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, Commissioners, you've heard the items for withdrawal or deferral. Is there a motion to approve? There's a motion to approve and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and those items are deferred or withdrawn. Now we're on to consent. Lisa.
As the information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. As noticed to our public, items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the Commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. The following items are on the consent agenda. Item number 1, the FY 2019-20 capital improvements budget. Staff recommendation is to approve, and I will note that Commissioner Blackshear is recusing herself from that item. Item number 12, 2019 S 047001 on page 7 of your agenda, 2306 Donna Hill Court. It's a request to create 2 lots on Donna Hill Court. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item 13, 2019 Z 035PR 001. It's a request to rezone from SP to R6A on North 7th. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 15, 2018 SP 013001. The cottages at City Heights SP. It's a request to rezone from RS5 to SP for properties located on 27th Avenue North to permit 16 multifamily units. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Item number 17 on page 8 of your agenda, 2019 S 059001, St. Charles Estates subdivision. It's a request for concept plan approval to create 13 residential lots on property located on Franklin Pike Circle. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 19, 122-83P 001, Phase 3 revision and final of the Woodlands. It's a request to revise the preliminary and for final site plan for 41 single-family lots. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Item number 23 on page 9 of your agenda, 2018 Z 129PR 001. It's a request to rezone from SP to MULA for property on Lebanon Pike. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item 24, 2019 Z 016PR 001. It's a request to rezone from R6 to RR20A for property located on Dr. Walter S. Davis Boulevard. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item 25, 2019Z046PR001. It's a request to expand the urban zoning overlay to various properties located east of Ellington Parkway. Apologies. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item 26, 2019Z051PR001. It's a request to rezone from CS to MUNA for property located on Fisk Street. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 27, 2019Z053PR001. It's a request to rezone from RM40 and R6 to RM40A for property located on 14th Avenue North. Staff recommendation is to disapprove as submitted. Approve RM40A for parcel 07015000300 and RM20A for the two smaller parcels, parcel 4 and parcel 45. Item number 28 on page 10 of your agenda, 2019Z054PR001. It's a request to apply a corridor design overlay district for various properties along Nolensville Pike. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 29, 2019Z055PR001. It's a request to rezone from IWD to MULA for property on Carson Street. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 30, 2019Z056PR001. It's a request to rezone from RS5 to R6A for property located on Lishy Avenue. Staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 32, 2019Z058PR001. It's a request to apply a contextual overlay district to various properties along Old Hickory Boulevard. Staff recommendation is to approve. And under other business, item 36, to accept the director's report and approve administrative items.
Thank you, Lisa. And so on the consent agenda, you've heard the items, but let's go through these to make sure that we have them correct. So we have items number 1, 12, 13, 15, 17, 19, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 32, and 36. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, Commissioners, you've heard those particular items, but before I get a motion, I do want to make a note on item 1. Is the CIB, which is the capital improvements budget. And obviously, this is a big deal, and I know that the team has reached out to you and went over that document with you. Over the years, the CIB has developed into a lot of work for the staff team, but I truly believe that it's really helped with coordination with the departments, and has really created just a really good document, not only for the mayor, but for the council members and for the public to see what type of big projects are going on in Nashville. And I just want to thank Greg Claxton. If you'll stand up, Greg, real quick. Let's give him a round of applause. All right. Any other discussion? Well, we have to get a motion. We'll get a motion for the consent agenda. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I guess I just wanted to make a point of clarification. I think we've all met individually with Greg to review the CIB. So
That is
we're
correct.
not having a long discussion about it tonight. We have all thoroughly.
Yes, unless there's questions
Right.
from the commissioners, or I'd be glad to.
I guess I just wanted to point that out, that we
Yes,
did take
and
the time to meet with him and walk through it in detail.
absolutely. And I think that it's a testament to him in working with all of the departments and the council office that it's on the consent agenda. So if there's no other discussion, this is the time to discuss. Absolutely. All right. Councilman, I want to thank the council office. I think there were very little discrepancies with the things that in the CIB and some of the council members' requests. So I appreciate the council members. Turn the microphone on, though, Councilman.
I could be a politician and take credit for it, but
Oh, that's good. Okay. Councilman Bedney takes credit, too. That's good. All right. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor of the consent agenda say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the consent agenda is passed. And so what that means to everybody in the audience, the items, and the commissioners, obviously, the items that we're going to hear tonight, and Lucy, make sure I'm correct here, this is items number 4, 11, 18, and 31. All the other items have been taken care of, either deferred or passed on the consent agenda. And then also there's more seats up front. I know that it's a little crowded tonight, so if you want to sit up front, you can. There are more seats up here. All right. So we are hearing items 4, 11, 18, and 31. And let's start with item 4.
Okay, item 4 is a request to rezone from single-family RS20 to a specific plan zoning on a portion of property located at 4,000 Brick Church Pike on 14.8 acres to permit 71 residential units, including 55 single-family lots and 16 multifamily units. The entire property is comprised of 41.87 acres and includes the areas outlined in red and blue on the screen. The proposed SP is comprised of 14.8 acres and is located on the portion of property that is outlined in red at the front of the site. The portion of the property outlined in blue is not part of the proposed plan. Here's another view of the site. The 14.8 acres proposed for development are outlined in red. Generally, the SP site is a little bit flatter and contains less vegetation than the remainder of the site, which is not included in this plan. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. The site is located at the corner of Brick Church Pike and Hillenglade Drive, which is a private drive. The request before you tonight is to rezone the 14.8 acre site, which is shaded in gray, to an SP. The remainder of the site, which is zoned RS20, that zoning will remain in place. Surrounding land uses include primarily single-family and vacant properties with scattered multifamily and two-family uses that are generally concentrated to the south on the east side of Brick Church Pike. The site plan proposes 71 total residential units, comprised of 55 single-family lots and 16 multifamily units. The single-family lot sizes range from approximately 5,400 square feet to around 13,000 square feet, with a typical lot being in the 5,400 to 7,000 square foot range. The multifamily units are housed in 4 buildings, identified as manor homes. Each manor home will contain 4 units, appearing from the exterior as a single-family home with 1 primary entrance, and access to the individual living units provided inside the structures. The manor homes are located on lot sizes that range from 15,000 to 20,000 square feet, and the units are located in front of the single-family lots, which are located back here. Access into the site is provided from a new public street, Road A, which will align with Cheshire Drive, which is an existing public street on the east side of Brick Church Pike. Road A will connect to a series of public streets that will connect to the northern and western property lines, providing options for future connections, and then also providing access to the single-family lots. The new public streets will include local sidewalks per the local standard, and Brick Church Pike will be improved per the MCSP standard with a 6-foot sidewalk and 8-foot planting strip. Open space is incorporated throughout the site, including a larger area of open space at the northwestern corner and some smaller open spaces that include areas for stormwater management. The plan includes architectural standards as included in your staff reports. The maximum building height is limited to 3 stories and 35 feet for the single-family lots and 2 stories and 30 feet for the manor home units. Staff finds the plan to be consistent with the neighborhood evolving policy guidance for properties with adjacency to less intense policy areas. The site is located in a larger area of neighborhood evolving and conservation policies that contains primarily undeveloped properties along the west side of Brick Church Pike, and it's also across the street from a T3 neighborhood maintenance policy area where the development pattern includes traditional suburban development. The original plans filed with the Planning Department proposed a mixed-use development with non-residential uses and 122 multifamily residential units, including over 50 stacked flat units located along the corridor. Staff had fundamental concerns about the overall development intensity, given the surrounding context and the adjacency to lower density policy areas. The original plans proposed an urban form and a suburban transect, and staff did not feel that it transitioned appropriately to the neighborhood maintenance areas across the street. Additionally, the non-residential uses that were initially proposed were not going to be considered by staff under the current residential policy. After ongoing discussions with the applicant, the scope and the layout were modified. The non-residential uses were removed. The interior of the site, which was previously proposed with townhome units and a large area of surface parking, was replaced with the single-family lots. The stacked flat units, which were proposed directly opposite of the traditional suburban development on the east side of Brick Church, were replaced with 4 manor home units. The depth and the spacing of the manor lots allow for more development along the corridor that is more compatible with the development across the street. The applicant has also provided exhibits demonstrating the proposed height, massing, and shared entries of the manor homes. The manor homes will appear from the exterior as single-family homes, consistent with the developed character on the east side of the corridor. The final SP will include architectural elevations that demonstrate compliance with these elevations and all other standards included in the SP. Therefore, staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions.
Thank you, Abby. We'll open this item for the public hearing. Is the applicant in the room? Come on up. Appreciate you coming, and you have 10 minutes, and you can save 2 minutes of the 10 for rebuttal. Please state your name and address. Thank you, sir.
All right. Good evening, and my name is Kerry McKiddens. I live at 4804 Indian Summer Drive, Nashville, Tennessee 37207. And I'd like to start out by thanking Council Lady Brenda Haywood, Abby Rickoff, the planning staff for such a long handheld process. I'd like to also thank you, the Planning Commission, for your decision on this afternoon. We think the project is a good project for the city. It helps with our city housing crisis. It's also good for our district. We have a number of schools in our district all around us. We also have hospitals in our district. We think it's good for first responders in our community. We have industrial and commercial in our area. So we think this project, and at the price point of the housing at $280 to $380, is affordable, sustainable for workforce housing. We also think that for the community, this project would bring a lot of value to its community. It would bring a lot of beauty and a lot of newness to the area. We truly hope that you all consider this as a good project and wait with the planning department and approve this project.
Thank you. Michael Garrigan, Dale & Associates, 516 Heather Place. We're the engineers on the project. As Abby stated, we've been working on this for, well, I guess she didn't state it, but we've been working on this for over 2 years. We've gone back and forth with staff several times. We've worked closely with all the metro departments. We appreciate their help to get to where we are today, where the departments have recommended approval. We've met with the neighborhood numerous times, as well as with Council Lady Haywood, and we feel like there's still some work to be done through the council process, but we're at the point now where we need to move this forward, and we feel like we've gotten the staff support. It is compliant with the land use policy. The conservation lands are being conserved. The density is, if you look at the land as a total, the density is actually less than what RS-20 would permit. So we ask for your support, and I'll save the rest for rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll save 2 minutes for rebuttal. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in support? In support of the project? Come on up. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Carlina Bell Rollins, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the project. I have been intimately involved with this project since inception, and I can say that it's a good project for the community, and we have worked closely with our engineers. We've even worked closely with the community to listen to their concerns. We've conducted surveys research, et cetera, and we have what I feel has been a good plan and a good process. And I like to say that even though we may not have the numbers represented, we do have petitions, we have letters of support that I know that, excuse me, Council Lady Brenda Heywood has received and has some in her possession as well. So I would like for you all to please strongly consider supporting this project, and that's my statement.
And ma'am, would you give us your address for the record?
My address is 7184 Sonia Drive, Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Make sure we get everybody. Anyone, seeing no one else wishing to speak in support, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Come on up. If y'all would line up, and that way we can get y'all up here, and then everybody has 2 minutes for rebuttal. 2 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. But before we get started, I want to just tell you a couple of ground rules so that, you know, we all keep it. The first ground rule that we have as a commission is always keep it professional, always address the chair. And if it would be great if, you know, try not to repeat yourselves and make sure, and we appreciate you coming in. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As leader of the Brick Church Neighbors Group, does that allow me for 5 minutes? I'll be brief. I know it's going to be a long evening.
No, that's what we do.
Okay. Excellent. My name is Michael Maples. I own 4010, 4012, and 4014 Brick Church Pike. It's the, can we get the drawing of the satellite imagery? It's the farm just to the north of the proposed SP, as well as the two adjoining houses. As far as the SP itself, I'm opposed. SPs are meant to offer additional flexibility for developers to meet market demands of the community. They're there to build developments that actually match the plans promised to the community by the general plan. And the developers who use SP must follow the goals and objectives of the general plan and something that adds to the community. Something that wasn't mentioned in the initial presentation by the lady. It says that it's mostly suburban area. Well, everything on that side of Brick Church Pike on the west side, it's all farmland. In fact, the Planning Commission rezoned the two properties that are just south of the project to an agricultural zoning just a few months ago, and was stated that they think that would be a good fit for this area. The only reason the developers have given us that they're going to use this SP is because that the land isn't good enough to build enough homes on the rest of it to use the existing RS-20 for them to make money. So it would need to be able to get cluster lots, and that's the reason that they're going to do SP. So in addition to the developer clustering the lots to avoid that zoning, they've shown blatant disregard for the community over the last 2 years. As Mr. McKibben said when he stood up, it's been a long handheld process with the councilwoman and with the staff department, the planning staff, and that's quite frankly scares me that we have to have a handheld process in getting such a volatile development. Also, 2017, in blatant disregard for the community and the city, in 2017, they were delinquent in property taxes. In 2017, they logged the property commercially, causing subsequent flooding on the neighboring ranch south of that, causing $20,000 of damage. In 2018, were delinquent in property taxes. In 2018, chose forestry as their tax classification to avoid property taxes, and in 2019 have chose agriculture as their tax classification with no intention of farming, obviously, since we're here addressing this. Personally, I'm on the farm just to the north. My wife and I purchased it 2.5 years ago, and we currently farm, and we had this big giant plan drawn up to do an orchard. because we found a property that has beautiful natural springs on it down at the base. And on the other satellite map, you can see it. I met with Stormwater, and it does show up on where the springs are at, it does show up on their drawing. And those springs, we have our design to use irrigation for this orchard because we want to do it organically. However, if they come up on this hillside, which you haven't seen the topography of it, but it's a bowl. If they come up on the hillside and begin to move dirt and begin to blast it all, I don't know if you're familiar at all with the structure of how groundwater works, but it could significantly alter the direction of which those springs come out. And that's my biggest personal concern. In addition to, I like to be a good neighbor with my community, and they have concerns too. So I'm with them. To get out of here quickly, this is a map that we've come up with. In the red, here's the property that's planned. Here's the entire property they own. The red shows up all of the neighbors who are written opposed to the development as it stands. Everything I've said today, upon further request, I can provide documentation for if anybody wants it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mervyn Luke. My wife Jennifer O'Neill and I have Hill and Glade Farm directly to the south of this proposed development. We have horses, ponies, donkeys, and have a 501c3, Hope and Healing at Hill and Glade, which we have had for 10 years. We offer free services and equine therapy for military, vets, first responders. We work with Fort Campbell, USO, the VA, Operation Stand Down. We do events for all kinds of groups, including the YWCA for single moms. We operate to give back to the community. And as I said, these are free services that we provide. We've been acknowledged on local news programs. The Today Show did a special on us, so we've been recognized nationally. We feel that this development would be a detriment to the rural and nature of our neighborhood. The logging, as he referred to, already has flooded our area, and we've had to condition some areas to control water that's now coming off the hill. And we know development is coming. We would just like it to stay with the zoning as is and not have an SP come in and do this condensed housing, which we think will change this area a lot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming down. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael McAllister, 4016 Ridgemont Drive. I live just right down the street here from the proposed plan. My number one concern, I won't repeat what everybody else says, is the environmental impacts, the runoff. You can't really tell from this, but I leave the road that faces that coming to work every day, and it is a straight uphill, and we've already had problems with runoff water and flooding, all that. That's my number one concern. The other point I just wanted to make real quick was a lot of things have been thrown around, and one of them was demand. I think the developer had mentioned that there's just not a demand for the surrounding area style houses anymore. And me being a younger family man, I moved to that area because we could have bigger lots, and we love bigger lots. And if you look at the map, you see the proposed plan doesn't even come close to matching what the demand of the area is. A lot of those closer level houses, yeah, there is a demand for it, and people my age, they want that style housing closer to downtown. This being so far away, it does not match the area at all, so I hope that you take that into consideration and tighten up.
Thank you. Yes. That was for the Titans.
I didn't know what that meant.
Lucy didn't know.
She's like, what did you say about us?
It's okay. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Hello, my name is Ryan Dowd, 4004 Sussex Drive. I live maybe a quarter mile from the property that we're talking about. I own a small business with my wife, and I'm here more for the fact that I'm trying to understand why someone who bought the property that knew the zoning was what it was, that it was not able to build a bunch of homes on, why they need a permit to build more houses to make more money. I'm a small businessman. I think a guy wants to buy a tract of land for $300,000 and build houses and make a couple mil. I'm all for it. That's the American dream. But to buy it knowing I can just get it rezoned, I'll just, work the system. I'm just really opposed to that. Build houses, growth is good, but to make a special permit that gives absolutely nothing to the community just doesn't make any sense for me, and that's why I'm opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Maggie Malone. I live at 4004 Sussex Drive, and I am opposed to the rezoning of this property. We've had many, many community meetings, and me, along with my neighbors, are 99% opposed to this. You'll see in the notebooks, if you have them with you, we've collected almost 100 signatures. You saw the map that Michael had of everyone who is against this. And what was amazing to me is that we had another community meeting on Monday evening, and we straight up asked them, the investors, the developers, why do you need this SP? Why is this important? And they told us point blank, we need it so that we can build more houses to make a larger profit. They literally said that to us. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no gray area. That is their purpose. Their plan right now for the SP gives nothing back to us as members of the community. We also asked them that question on Monday night, and they were dumbfounded and had no specific reasons or positive things that they could give us as members of the community that this SP would help us with. In addition, I also am afraid of the stormwater. Flooding is a big issue in our neighborhood. There's also a map in your notebook as well. And even with just the recent logging that they've done on the property, neighboring properties have had significant amount of damage due to the flooding. Every time we ask them about it in meetings, they just point to a little green corner on their diagram. Oh, this will fix it. That's not an actual plan. Having a drawing is not an actual plan, and they have not put in the work, the time, or the effort to figure out these problems. So I do not think that they should be granted the SP. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, it's my first time speaking at something like this, so bear with me. I'm against this, and I live 1 block away from this. That's essentially through my backyard and my neighbor's backyard. I just moved to 4020 Ridgemont from Miami, Florida. I bought this house 4 months ago. And 2 things. I was basically, the neighborhood that I lived at in Miami is called Little Haiti. And Miami instituted a type of law called a special area plan, which says that if someone buys 10 square blocks of land, the zoning goes wide open. And it's encouraged developers to just gather random 10 square blocks of land around the city. And what it's done is just destroy the character of neighborhoods. So my neighborhood, rather than growing organically, just neighbors moving in, is a lot of working class people. And suddenly there's 3 of these special area plans where people are planning on building 24-story buildings. And anyhow, I moved here, and the reason why I moved into this neighborhood is because it's 1-acre lots. It's 10 to 15 minutes from town. It's beautiful, it's quiet, the neighbors are great, and here I am 4 months in, and someone 1 block away is looking to build something that, the way I understand it, is zoned for potentially 24 houses. And I can't understand what their logical reason is, rather than making money, but I understand rather than build 24 houses, they want to build 71 houses and 4 apartment buildings right on the main road. And I think this will disrupt the whole neighborhood. Anyhow, thank you. I appreciate it.
You did great. Next.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Lisa Johnson. I live at 4001 Ridgemont Drive. Bellshire Estates and the surrounding area is a well-established neighborhood of 1-acre brick homes. This proposed development and zoning change is simply not consistent with the harmony and character of the surrounding area. Having been a resident of the Bellshire area for nearly 57 years, I am proud to now reside in the family home my parents built over 61 years ago. This proposal will impact the natural springs and creeks throughout the entire area, and we already have flooding issues throughout the community. On Cheshire Drive, he's going to show you, one natural spring and creek is not even illustrated on this map nor on their plot, and that is a major issue which must be addressed. And I can attest to you that it is there, as I have played in it my entire life, different times, and it's located at 1348 Cheshire, and a photograph of it is in the book that was submitted to you yesterday. Cheshire and Belgrimes is the pink house in the book. Cheshire and Belgrimes are used as connectors for high-volume traffic every day, and it's dangerous. Additional traffic will make life unbearable and dangerous for residents, for children that load and unload off of school buses throughout the week, and for residents walking throughout the neighborhood. The traffic on Cheshire has been a contentious discussion with Metro Police and council persons over many years for traffic calming. This zoning change will only magnify the problems. Do not allow this to happen, please. This SP zoning request, it gives nothing back to this community. Nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing, please. It does not meet the requirements of an SP. It's currently zoned as RS20, allowing for the building of 28 homes. They knew that when they bought it. It's already been brought up. It's not appropriate. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Welcome.
Hello, I'm James Ladd. I live on Sussex Drive in Bellshire, have since 1980, and I've been in the area since 1956. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to the Planning Commission staff. This is a very bewildering process to most of us property owners, and special thanks to Ms. Rickoff. She's been very patient with us. I am totally against this project. It will definitely change the character of our entire neighborhood. I think the Nashville Next Plan was correct in setting the zoning at RS20. I think that's reasonable, but still a concession in Bellshire is essentially the 250 or so homes are RS40 under today's standards. As it's been stated, the only reason we've been giving for high-density housing is profit. The stormwater issues in Bellshire, particularly on that side, are something to pay special attention to. I have asked the developer several times about the stormwater features and not received any concrete answers. Essentially, they told me that the stormwater would be water runoff and it would go into the existing stormwater system. The existing stormwater system, all the houses across the street are below street grade. There's only one hardscape feature in that entire property now, and that's a driveway that goes to the former home site in the middle. We've had houses bought out in Bellshire due to flooding. There's 2 or 3 creeks in there, and all these houses on the other side of Brick Church Pike still have water issues, even without the additional hardscape. It seems to me that any change that you would approve from RS20 should be the betterment of the neighborhood and not the detriment. I'd ask you to please deny this and keep it as zoned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm King Dandridge, and I reside at 4017 Dunbarton Drive. I've been in Nashville for the last 23 years, and the neighborhood has changed somewhat. There's been a lot of construction going on, but basically the structure has remained the same. The schools, a lot of schools in the neighborhood, and the traffic is just tremendous. You see cars just breezing through the school zones during this, and it's just ridiculous. But now here, we are with construction 71-unit construction, and it would just make the traffic that much worse. And the logging that's going on and removing the trees and storm water, you know, it would just flood the area, which a lot of areas have been flooded in the past. And I just think this is a bad idea because, you know, there are other places that they could build instead of on a hill and leveling it off. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. Hello.
Good evening. Hello. I'm Elaine McReynolds, 1517 Naples Avenue, and I live in one of the adjoining neighborhoods, and we're pretty much affected, and I'll explain that. You've been talked to about the traffic and the flooding and all those concerns, but mine's a little bit more of an emotional nature. This SP is requesting something, saying they're going to enhance the neighborhood. I'd like to argue that they're going to do just the opposite. One of the adjacent properties, Hillwood, which you heard about, serves as a place for veterans, for their families to get away, particularly those suffering from PTSD and other illnesses. They ride horses, ponies, play games, have picnics, and part of the benefit and aesthetic of that is having this wonderful open space. Putting a large concentration of homes right there where you're asking veterans to try to recover from PTSD doesn't seem like it's enhancing the neighborhood. I think that's unthinkable, and I'd like for you to consider that when you look at this and disprove this SP. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Elise Hudson, 4601 Whites Creek Pike. I'm with the Friends of Whites Creek, so I respectfully ask for 5 minutes. I requested that earlier, please.
5 minutes.
Thank you. If you notice here, only 14 acres of this entire lot is being asked to have an SP on it. Currently, it's RS20 with about half-acre lots, and they could build up to 26 single-family homes today. So the SP is asking for a front area of multifamily homes and 3 times the amount of homes that they are currently allowed to build. Even under the cluster lot rule, they would be able to build, a little bit more density with 10,000 square foot lots. But the proposed lots here are 5,400 to 7,000 square foot lots, when the surrounding areas are often on acre lots. So it doesn't really. They could build today. They just would have to abide by different density, and under T3&E, so this is T3&E policy, they still don't really have any connectivity, which is what that policy talks about. It doesn't talk, they don't have any environmentally sensitive building techniques or any kind of sensitively designed areas around watersheds. Those are all both spoken to in T3&E. An SP is generally designed to work something out with the neighborhood so that they could get some benefit back from the special provisions in that SP. This doesn't provide anything. There's no rules about building with brick. There's no recreational areas, which they would also have to put in under cluster lots. There is some open space, but it's not usable. They're not going to put trails or anything on it. Under cluster lots as well, if they just built as is, they would require perimeter lots to be 90% of the size of the surrounding areas. This actually puts the most density in the multifamily homes right up against the community. They don't really have a landscape buffer. There's no similarity in character there. There's no homeowners association. And let me make a comment too. This is 2.5 years in the making. So the community has been trying to work with this developer for several years and understands what the community wants in terms of the density levels, in terms of getting something back. And they haven't really changed a whole lot of what they have kept coming back to. I mean, they started out with commercial on Brick Church Pike, so I'll give them that. But there isn't anything that they have given to the point of actually providing something back to the community that would be worth having this level of density. They often talk about how this is phase one of multiple phases to this development. And so if it was truly going to give the kind of average density along the lot that would be less than what cluster lots are requiring, or more than what cluster lots are applying, then they would put an SP over the whole thing and say they were only going to put these 75 houses. But they have intent to actually build more than those 75 houses, and that's why they only pulled out the 14 acres. I also want to just make another comment about the T3NE in this area. Whites Creek is right across the interstate from this and right down the street from this. There are a lot of rural areas that got lumped into T3NE at the beginning of Nashville Next against what the neighbors wanted because they quote unquote drained to sewer. And so there are several areas in District 3 that we're trying to look at and make sure that the policy is actually matching what the neighbors fought hard for the past, for 2 years as part of the Nashville Next process. And I think this is another one of those areas that was not applied as the neighbors wanted. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that you'll consider disapproving this and that it does not give back enough to the community. And I, as always, very much appreciate that you are all volunteers and here all the time. So thank you for protecting us.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Duke Sutherland. I'm with Crylak Realtors up in Goodlettsville. I'm here to represent the Acosta family, who's not able to be here today. They own all the property, well, most of the property, especially to the right of Hill and Glade Drive, which is on the south side of this property. They own just about everything, I think, and more adjoining this property that's under consideration today. They've owned this property for over 25 years now. It's about 64 acres of land there. And they've experienced flooding from this property in the past. And if you'll notice the way the diagram shows, it looks like these houses are going to be backing right down to the property line. Michael Maples spoke first, and owning the property to the north. They own the property to the south on Hill and Glade. And the elevation drop, in which, by the way, I have a map with me today, an elevation map. It shows an elevation drop across part of this property that's under consideration of about 220 feet. From the back dropping to Brick Church Pike, it drops from about 820 feet down to about 600 feet on this property. And the Acostas are definitely not against some kind of developments in the future, but not this kind of a development that's just going to flood the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? And then, Council, what we'll do is let the rebuttal, and then we always let the councilman go last. 2-minute rebuttal. Seeing no one else wishes to speak in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I kept pretty good notes. I'll try to go through all of those. Michael Garrigan, Dale & Associates, 516 Heather Place. To start out, it was stated that it wasn't consistent with the general plan. In fact, it is. It is Transect 3 neighborhood evolving. So it is compliant with Nashville Next and the land use policy, which is why staff has recommended approval. There were statements about flattening the hill, blasting, affecting groundwater. If you look at our grading plan that's part of our submitted drawings, we're stepping these houses down. They're split level houses, all the single family houses. They've been located so that they're parallel with contours, so that the way that it works is the two east-west streets will be approximately 20 feet difference in grade, which is what they are today, because this row of houses will step up 1 story or 10 feet, then this row of houses will step up 1 story or 10 feet. So we're trying to minimize the grading, minimize the disturbance. The reason for the clustering is simple. It's the back remainder of this 42 acres is unbuildable. It's all green. It's all shaded green on your land use map. It's all conservation land. Once again, it's 42 acres of RS20 property, which at 1.85 units per acre would yield 78 lots. We're requesting 71. The reason phase 2 has been left as ambiguous is there are some thoughts to do some agricultural type uses back there. They weren't nailed down or tied in at the time, and so working with staff, since we couldn't define what they were going to be, it was just left in its current zoning. We have provided a traffic impact study that requires improvements along Brick Church Pike that we have agreed to do. The stormwater was obviously one that you heard a lot. You also heard a council member state earlier that Metro has very strenuous, very challenging stormwater regulations to meet. We will have to meet those. We will have to have low-impact design standards, green infrastructure practices. Rain gardens, we're showing 7 locations for bioretention right now that we feel will adequately address the stormwater issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor, come on up. Welcome.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for being here and for your service. I know what that looks like and feels like. My name is Council Lady Brenda Hillwood, and I live at 4101 Bridge Church Pike, right down from this proposed subdivision. And I'm just here because we have had meetings in excess of 2 years. And the reason for that, initially, they brought us a plan that myself and other members of the community, we were opposed to. And we made that unequivocally clear that we were opposed to the plan. So at each meeting, I would have my constituents to fill out a card to write down what are you all mainly in opposition of. And I would have them, as I do all of my meetings, to give those to the developers, and then we would come back and see if there have been concessions or modifications, or have they been mitigated. And again, we've done that over 2 years now. The first speaker articulated that some hands had been held. Now, I don't know how that could be justified or qualified or quantified. I'm not real sure. The only hands that have been held is the hands that he held when he initially talked to me about wanting that land for some things that he had in mind. And that always concerned me because I have not played any favoritism. I'm a retired teacher and I'm a minister, and I only say that to say that not only do I listen, I hear. And I'm very attentive when people are talking in my neighborhood because they voted for me to represent them, and I will do nothing less than that. I turned over all the communications that I gave for and against. I was handed a stack when I got here tonight they were in favor of, and I had another stack they were opposed to. I submitted those. I see some merit in this development, and I see some things that would not be beneficial to our particular area. I could actually walk to this particular area. So I say tonight, based on the turnout tonight and the meetings that we've had, it seems like the majority of my constituents are against this particular project. So based on that, I would say that at this point, one or two things could happen. The first speaker emailed me last week or a week before. He's very specific about his wording and doesn't want anything to be taken out of context, as nobody would. But when he emailed me based on a meeting that had been held, I was out of town with my grandson, and I told him to give me some notes from that meeting, and he told me that we're getting closer. Every meeting was to get closer to what we could actually live with in this area. And the first speaker told me we're getting closer. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer. So I took that to mean, by his words and some words of some other people, that we would continue to work with the developers if at all possible. So one or two things have to happen tonight. Based on the turnout tonight, I would have to be in opposition. I would have to be in staunch opposition of this project. Based on the wordings that several people have emailed me. And I have to regress here for a moment. I will have to say that these developers, again, the word handheld from the planning and myself, they have been extremely cooperative as it relates to trying to please the neighbors. So I will say that they have worked very diligently, tirelessly to work with us on this subdivision. So one or two things would have to happen, and it's up to you all. They can continue to try to work with us. One of my constituents mentioned, of course, right now it's R20, and that calls for 20-something houses. They could take a look at that. I don't know if they're even willing to do that, but they have been willing to work with us, and we've been willing to work with them. So at this time, I would just like to thank you. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Council Lady. We'll ask the developer what they want to do, if they want to. We'll give them 1 second. Hold on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you're right.
Michael Garrigan, Dale and Associates.
We haven't closed the public hearing yet, so we'll just, because of what the council lady said, I'd like to hear are you all willing to defer, or what would you like to do?
Yes, sir, we are. Based upon what Ms. Haywood's statements, we'd like to defer and take the opportunity to meet with the community. I believe indefinite would be appropriate.
Yes.
That would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else wishing to speak, we declare the public hearing closed. And so since the developer is the testimony based on the council lady and the developer are willing to do an indefinite deferral, we can still talk about the issue and then make that motion, but we have a lot of other folks here that want to speak. So
May I?
Yes,
And to
Director.
clarify, the reason that's important is this case was a zoning case, so it's a rezoning. Rezonings are advisory and go to council, and I only wanted to make that because the next two are subdivisions, so they would be looked at differently. But it's important, if the council member was expressing that concern, that that's why we could reach that decision. I'm also saying that for the benefit of the folks in the audience. The council, yes, sorry, yeah.
Councilman, you're right.
I just wanted to say that debating this particular layout when they are going to come back with something that is maybe different, it will be kind of counterproductive. So I wanted to make a motion to do an indefinite deferral.
That's a proper motion. Is there a second? Any other discussion from commission members?
I just want to make sure
Vice
we
Chair.
leave the public hearing open when it comes back to us.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yes, and the intention would be to reopen the public hearing
okay.
if it comes back. All right, all in favor of the indefinite deferral, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and it is deferred indefinitely. So we have 4 cases tonight, so I'd like to get through at least 2, commissioners, if you guys can power through another one. Would that be okay? All right. Perfect. Well, then let's hear item number 11. Hey, everybody. So if we could just, we're on to item 11. So if we need to quiet down a little bit. That way we can hear item 11. Then I appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
All right, item number 11 is a request for concept plan approval to create 32 cluster lots, including 8 duplex lots for a total of 40 units on property at Watts Lane and Knob Road on approximately 37.53 acres. The site is zoned 1 and 2 family residential, R40. This development is located off of Knob Road, east of Charlotte Pike, and west of White Bridge Pike. The site is located on a portion of property, so it's on 37.5 acres of 66.63 total acres. The proposed subdivision is located on the portion that is outlined in red. The portion that is outlined in a blue dashed line is not included in the proposed development. Parcel 164, the smaller parcel to the north, is comprised of 0.83 acres and is vacant. It's located along the northern portion of the site, and it borders Watts Lane to the west and Marcia Avenue, unimproved right-of-way, to the north. Parcel 127 abuts Knob Road. There is an existing church on the eastern portion of Parcel 127. Again, this portion is not included in the proposed subdivision. The site is heavily wooded and contains some areas of potential steep slopes, as well as a stream that flows along Knob Road at the front of the property. As a point of reference, the WSMV TV towers are located northeast of the site over here. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Before I get into my presentation, I'd like to give you a bit of history. The Planning Commission, at its April 13th, 2017 meeting, disapproved case 2017 S-033-001, which was a concept plan with 30 cluster lots located on the portion of the site that is shaded in yellow. Following staff's recommendation of approval with conditions including a variance to the length of a dead-end street. The currently proposed subdivision includes the initial portion that proposed for development, but it also includes a parcel to the north, shaded in blue, parcel 164. The addition of parcel 164 allows the internal street network to connect through the site rather than terminating at a dead end, and therefore a variance is no longer needed with the proposed plan. The site is zoned for 1 and 2 family residential development and is surrounded by properties zoned for single family, 1 and 2 family, and multifamily development. The WSMV tower is located on this oddly configured parcel 258. This proposal, as a reminder, is for subdivision development under existing entitlements. No rezoning is proposed with this application. As a general reminder, the Planning Commission is granted the authority to review and approve subdivisions through state statute, and subdivisions are reviewed against the technical requirements of the adopted subdivision regulations. The proposal before you tonight is for the first phase, which is a concept plan. If the concept plan is approved, there are subsequent phases included in the subdivision review process. Before we get into the site plan details, I'd like to provide an overview of the cluster lot regulations, as the proposal before you tonight is for a cluster lot subdivision. In order to provide for flexibility of design, the creation of open space, and for preservation of natural features, the Metro Zoning Code permits the development of cluster lot subdivisions in single family, so an RS, and 1 and 2 family R zoning districts. To permit creative design necessary to meet the premise of the cluster lot option, residential lots are allowed to contain less area than what is normally required by the base zoning district when certain standards are met. This is something that is permitted by right if the property is zoned for single or 1 and 2 family development, and this site is. The maximum lot yield is determined by subtracting 15% of the gross area from the total to account for infrastructure, and then the remaining area is divided by the minimum lot size of the base zoning district, in this case 40,000 square feet. So we begin with a lot area of 37.53 acres. We take out 15%, which is roughly 5.6 acres. That leaves us with 31.9 acres. And then we divide that by 40,000 square feet, which is the minimum lot size in R40, and that results in 34.74. And we round down for 1 and 2 family lots. So that would mean 34 lots would be the maximum. And because we're in an R zoning district, 25% of those lots may be duplex eligible. So 8 of those lots may contain duplexes. So this means that the maximum density is 34 lots with 8 duplex lots for a total of 42 maximum units. The cluster lot option does not allow more density than what would be allowed under the existing R40 district, but it does allow the minimum lot area for single-family lots to be reduced down to a minimum of 2 base zoning districts, which would be R20 in this instance. As proposed, all of the single-family lots have been clustered down to a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, and the lots identified as two-family or duplex lots have a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet per the cluster lot provisions. The plan proposes a cluster lot subdivision with 32 lots, including 8 duplex lots for a total of 40 units. The single-family lots are clustered down to the R20 district size of 20,000 square feet, and the duplex lots are a minimum of 40,000 square feet and have been dispersed throughout the site. None of the lots have been identified on natural slopes of 20% or greater, and no problem soils have been identified on the site plan. The stream and stream buffer at the front of the site along Knob Road are not located in any of the proposed lots. All of the lots are oriented along new streets, which will connect to Knob Road to the south and Watts Lane to the north. Road A is accessed from Knob Road, and Road D is accessed from Watts Lane to the north, and they will extend to the center of the site and provide and connect to 2 interior streets that provide access to the western lots. In cluster lot subdivisions, a minimum of 15% of each phase of development shall be open space. So of the 37.53 acres proposed for subdivision, approximately 15 acres, 15.1 acres, or 40.2% of the site is proposed as open space. This includes area for stormwater management, recreational facilities, and it does include the portion of the tower easement and tower buffer area within the site that is shaded in purple. A standard B buffer is also provided around the perimeter lots in accordance with the cluster lot provisions, and the streams and associated buffers located along Knob Road have been identified on the site plan. Prior to any land disturbance, an environmental survey and hydrologic stream determination will be conducted in order to identify any streams or other protected water features in accordance with the stormwater regulations. As mentioned at the beginning of this report, the inclusion of parcel 164 allows the internal street network to extend through the site to Watts Lane, providing a second means of access that was not included in the 2017 plan. Watts Lane will be improved from the Watts Lane access point to Charlotte Pike as determined by the Metro agencies prior to final plat approval. The lots are located, all of the lots are located outside the areas with steep slopes and streams and stream buffers, and no critical lots have been identified on the plan. As proposed, the plan meets all requirements for the subdivision regulations and the cluster lot provisions of the zoning code, and therefore staff recommends approval with conditions. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Abby. We'll open this item for public hearing. The applicant has 10 minutes. And you can save 2 of the minutes of the 10 for rebuttal.
And I will do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Roy Dale with Dale & Associates, and I'm representing the applicant. I hope you're proud of the staff because that's the best presentation I think I've ever heard on a subdivision. That was really good. She did an excellent job. As she mentioned, this was before you 2 years ago. And at the time, there was a discussion with the community for an hour and a half. I went back and listened to that tape today. And hopefully we can avoid some of that today. This property is owned by a church. They would have brought a lot of people down here. I told them not to bring any, quite honestly. This is all about the subdivision regulations and whether this meets the subdivision regulations or not. It's as simple as that. So this came before the commission 2 years ago, and although it was recommended approval by the staff, it had very long cul-de-sacs, as you'll probably remember. And I think 1 or 2 of the commissioners had concerns about that from a safety perspective. And more or less the applicant was sent back to more or less, try to find another point of access. And that's exactly what they've done. They actually have another point of access here. So as you know, we have a lot of community meetings, and they're becoming more and more difficult, quite honestly. If you read a lot of your emails that you get, I'm a whipping boy now, I guess, for the development industry. But community meetings are valuable. You can go to the community with a concept plan that meets all the requirements of a subdivision. You can say, here's the plan. Or you can go to the community and say, look, what can we do? What can we do to make this plan better? And so there were a lot of comments at the community meeting. A lot of them had to do with stormwater. Some had to do with traffic. A lot of them had to do with about the environment and about the property. This is what people consider this to be a sensitive piece of property. And so we deferred this. This was actually originally submitted in January. The council member called me, asked me to defer, have a community meeting, have great respect for this council member. And so we had a community meeting, probably attended by 50 people or so. And as a result of this meeting, I totally revised these plans. And what I've done, and Councilmember Johnson noticed this, what I've done on these plans are beyond subdivision regulations. When this property is developed, all that can be touched is the roadway, utilities, that's it. None of the rest of the property can be touched at all. All the vegetation has to remain. When individuals develop these individual properties, I worked it out with stormwater. When we design a subdivision, we have to more or less design it for stormwater quality and quantity, and we'll do that for the entire subdivision. But in this case, each property owner, as they develop their properties, are going to have to do a double layer of protection. They're going to have to do their own infill and do their own infill water plan, stormwater plan. In addition, they have to show a plan with the trees, which trees they're going to disturb. They're going to have to show houses that conform to the topography, and that was part of what I came up with when I revised the plans. And so I had this community meeting, and then I had another community meeting where I more or less pointed out the things that we're adding to this plan to make it a much better plan. Again, these are items that are not required by subdivision, not required by any subdivision regulation, but elements that were added to the plan which we felt like the community had good insight. I think their concerns were valid, and therefore we should do a better job on how we develop a subdivision in this case, and that's what we've done. They have concerns about stormwater on Knob Road. I did a drainage study. I looked at the amount of stormwater coming from this site. It's probably 10% of this water from this site actually contributes to the problems they're having downstream. But we can, I think, develop this piece of property. We have to develop it to not increase any stormwater, but it's possible with all the infill development and the infill individual plans that maybe the stormwater could even be reduced. And so that's a hope that I would have. Again, I've asked the church to not have a lot of people here. I think that the discussion here should be geared towards the subdivision requirements and whether you meet those requirements or not. The Planning Commission staff is in charge of that. They're supposed to respond to you and tell you whether or not those requirements have been met, and they're telling you that. Each department has signed off on this as well. So water and sewers, okay. Stormwater's okay. Traffic and parking, they're okay. But keep in mind, I hope the community keeps this in mind also, this is a concept plan. That's all this is a concept plan. It more or less tells a developer that conceptually, you're allowed to do this. They still have to survey the property. They still have to do all types of work. They still have to go to planning. They still have to get all these approvals. This is a concept and a concept only. And you're mandated, I think, by laws to review this based upon the subdivision requirements, and we meet those standards. I sort of got some insight today that there might be some discussion about the tower. And so what I've brought today is something to give you, and this is all, Planning Commission has this in their files. I'm going to hand it over here. So this is nothing new. As a matter of fact, I pulled Larry Oakes, who is the vice president of Meredith Corporation, who owns the tower. He is an engineer. And he came before this body and spoke before you, and I've actually taken what he wrote down there, so I'm not paraphrasing it, you can see it. But the Meredith Corporation more or less identifies an area on a tower of 350-foot radius. We went 150 feet beyond that. And so what Larry has said to you, and he said it to you publicly, he said it to me in an email as well, that that radius is sufficient for them. But he did also mention something else that I noticed today. He had concerns about blasting. And so today I added a paragraph, or in that little handout, of a possible condition that you could add if you wanted to that would deal with blasting. I think Larry, more or less, he's not concerned about the structural integrity of the tower. The church they built a church really close by. They did some blasting when they did the church. It had no negative effect on the tower. But obviously, as an engineer, I think he would want to know that someone went the extra mile. So in this handout that I gave you, and I don't have a copy of it now, so I'm basically saying that I could read it, but you could read it.
Those are your notes.
A lot of curse words, just kidding.
Okay. All right, that's good. So I'm suggesting if you get into an issue you're concerned about the presence of this tower. And what I would suggest that you say is that prior to the issuance of the first grading permit, the applicant will provide the Metro Planning Commission staff with a geologic and engineering assessment with respect to blasting and its effects on the WSMV transmission tower. Said assessment will also be provided to the Meredith Corporation for their review. This assessment will be based upon final construction plans of the roadway. Again, this is a concept. You're not going to know this stuff till you do final plans. The assessment will be based upon final construction plans of the proposed roadway and the associated utility improvements. The final construction plans will be completed based upon field-run boundary and topographic survey. Said survey will also identify, and I've added this because of the community, any trees over 8 inches in caliper, any rock outcropping springs or waterways. And most of these things, or all of these things, we would actually do anyway when we do final construction plans. And so I'll save my 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it very much.
All right. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor? In favor? All right, seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Y'all would line up. We appreciate it. And remember, so a few ground rules just to remember. Always be professional. And you have 2 minutes. And then please state your name and your address for the record. And we really appreciate everyone coming down.
I'm pretty loud if I have to be.
All right, everybody, if I could gather everybody's attention. And so we also need to make sure, we try to make sure that you don't repeat yourself. We appreciate you coming down. And that this is not a rezoning, it's a subdivision request, which is different. And I appreciate you all coming down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Don O'Donnelly. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Tennessee. I carry the status of senior counselor as a member of the Tennessee Bar Association. I'm also an American Institute of Certified Planners. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the neighbors who have concerns about this development. We're asking this body.
We'll give you 5 minutes.
To defer this action. Here with me today is my second chair co-counsel, Joe Johnston. I reside at 2603 Belmont Boulevard, where I've either owned or lived since 1950, and before that, I lived across the street at 2614 since 1945. So I'm a little familiar with Nashville. We appreciate your time today. And much of what we have to say is required to set legal precedent because you have to consider these matters in case there is a challenge. I hope that you understand we appreciate your staff, we appreciate your service, we appreciate the efforts that Mr. Dale has made. But there are questions, and we want to draw them to your attention. Your staff covered that you have the authority, consistent with the Nashville Next Plan, Transcend 3, to approve. You also have the authority to disapprove. You have the general plan. You have the authority to defer for 60 days, and it does not require any consent. That's under both your rules and state law. A concept as drawn, does not, in our opinion, meet the legal requirements of consistency with the plan. The plat before you attempts to identify lots, but most of the other areas are simply labeled. undeveloped, not to be disturbed. There's no legal description of what basis they'll have within this plat. We think that is required. So also, we have the question of the easement. The easement is the underlying ownership being transferred to this property. Will the easement run with that? That would be covered in the deed. It's not before you. There's not a submittal that would demonstrate that. The Class C buffer and stormwater management areas are labeled, but there's nothing there that establishes an easement or a transfer of ownership to account for how they would be maintained and who would have control of them. This is a legal matter. You can either plat lots and sell them, or you can create easements, but this proposal attempts to do both. The correct tool for that is SP zoning. It is not cluster development. Cluster development would require these matters to be addressed by easement, in our opinion, and they should be included in the adjoining lots. You're using an existing access point from Knob Road that has no current status before Metro other than a driveway permit. There's no offer of cross-access and egress easement presented to you, no assurance that this is approved as an entrance, and therefore it's questionable as an access point. These are technical matters that can be handled, but to date have not been. This is why we're asking for the deferral, to have time to work out these matters with the developer, the purported property owner to be, and with your staff. Sheet 5 purports to demonstrate a tree plan. The site is heavily treed, but there is no plan. It's just a drawing with the end of a pencil cut off and dipped in ink and stamped continuously across it. That's not acceptable. Just take a few minutes more, if you would. I'll be short.
Well, sir, we're under strict rules. Your partner can do 2 minutes, but you have ran out of time, and I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. O'Donnelly has worked very hard on this, and I would like to defer, give my 2 minutes to him, if that's okay.
Well, so generally, I generally don't like to, because then everyone will ask for that in future hearings. And so our rules are, and I feel like I was as lenient as possible, gave you 5 minutes instead of the 2 minutes. And so if it just, you should understand precedence. And so if you would, I understand that he has worked very hard on this, but if you could continue his questions, then I think that would suffice. And we're trying to be as fair as possible, but you understand we have our own rules, and if we break them, then we set up precedents for future hearings to break them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to read then from Mr. O'Donnelly's argument about the space that he stopped. Reading on now, some of the proposed enforcement measures suggested by the applicant reply on the HOA being established as homeowners association. This is a clear demonstration. The proposal is an attempt to bypass seeking a zone change that would require a plan, certain clear rules as to what are common elements and limited to common elements. The HOA are uniformly controlled by the developer to a point where a certain percentage of lots have been sold. Thus, during the most critical phase of development, that is construction, the HOA is the developer and would be the designated enforcer monitoring the developer. In other words, the developer is monitoring himself. Only owners can belong to HOAs under state law, the developer and the units purchased. Existing zoning laws allow development at R40. Any such development will require approvals proposed in this development. In addition, 2 churches were permitted with a promise of reserving the hillside for no development. It is incorrect to state that this is undeveloped property. WSM developed a tower and a studio complex 40-some years ago. As a part of that process, buffer areas and the easement were implemented to protect the adjoining areas. WSM has recently documented serious dangers from ice sheeting of the tower to a distance of over 600 feet. This proposal breaks that commitment that the remaining area adjoining the churches would be preserved. At a minimum, the concept needs to be revisited to eliminate lots most likely to be damaged from ice blowing from the tower. Having set forth legal reasons for the concept plan fall short of meeting the consistency test, we ask you to move for deferral. Thank you.
Thank you, and I really appreciate both of you coming down. Thank you.
We have copies of each if we'd like.
Yeah, it would be great. Let's give the copy of that to the staff.
I apologize, there's a misspelling on transient, but
It's okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. We'll let you all get it. We'll give you a little time to get out of the way. We appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you all very much for coming in. All right, so remember, 2 minutes, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
We do have a handout.
Perfect. We give it, and then we'll, if you'll hand it, and then we'll.
My time's running.
Start you over. There we go.
Ready? Good evening. I am Cindy Anderson. I live at 1211 Watts Terrace. My property is located right up against the proposed subdivision. The next 7 speakers in our line will present layers of solid evidence that build, each upon the other, to make a single powerful case that this subdivision should not be built. I will use my 2 minutes to let the speakers introduce themselves, and I will step aside and let the first speaker come up.
Well, each speaker has 2 minutes, so.
Right. So here's
All right.
the first speaker. Okay.
Hi, I'm David Crenshaw. I live on Knob Road, 5730 Knob Road. I've been in Nashville for 50 years. I've lived at this address for 23 years. I'm a native Nashvilleian. My wife and I have raised a family on that piece of property for 23 years. Good evening. The first 2 pages of the handout you were given are concept plans. The plan that you're voting on tonight, and a nearly identical plan that this commission rejected 2 years ago. The difference leaps right out. In 2017, you rejected the single access plan, and the plan you're voting on tonight proposes a second access, a potential road connection north to Watts Lane. Now, we draw your attention to the final page of your handout. See item number 1. This is a powerful sentence from the Nob Hill Special Policy in Nashville Next. We've highlighted this passage because this single sentence is fundamental to why the Commission voted no in 2017, and that is why it is fundamental that you vote no on the concept plan that's before you tonight. From the Nob Hill Special Policy, the quote is, "In the configuration of parcels and any new right-of-way, priority should be given to the preservation of environmentally sensitive features." This is a very difficult piece of property to build on, and there is grave concerns about safety. Over consistency with surrounding parcel and right-of-way patterns, unquote. This sentence is the driving engine of everything you're about to hear from us. All the players are here tonight that know the Nob Hill Special Policy requires developers to preserve the parcel's sensitive environment. 2 years ago, this commission voted down the single access plan to develop Nob Hill. That single access plan needed a variance to allow triple length turnarounds. The commission rejected the triple length variance for good reasons, mainly the applicant's failure to meet the subrec requirements to justify longer turnarounds. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Greg Atkinson. I'm a licensed engineer and general contractor, and I'm a concerned citizen of Nob Hill. My property backs up to the proposed development. In 2017, your planning staff recommended to approve the variance even though the staff knew that long turnarounds presented hazards, like emergency responders in and out. As we found out a year earlier on Fleetwood, my next-door neighbor's house burned to the ground. Our road is nearly twice the length of the proposed turnarounds, and it proved infeasible. Planning staff knew these hazards, and even though the applicant's reasons were inadequate to justify the variance, still the planning staff recommended that you approve the triple-length turnarounds. Why did you do that? Why did they recommend a flawed design? Well, I'll tell you why. It turns out that Roy Dale and the planning staff actually had an alternate plan in 2017, a way to build this subdivision with two accesses, with connectivity by adding a road connection to the north as a second way out. With this two-access plan, they wouldn't need the variance. Yet Roy Dale and the planning staff didn't recommend that connectivity. Why not? Because they knew that as bad as the triple-length turnarounds were, the road connection to the north was worse. It was worse because it would violate the environmental constraints of the Knob Hill special policy. That road connection to the north presents problems. It rises up a 15% slope. Metro Public Works says a residential street's maximum grade is 10%, with special variables of 12% if it saves the environment from damage. Excuse me. It can never be more than a 12% grade, but even a 12% steep grade up a 15% slope requires severe cutting and filling, a lot of environmental damage and destruction to build a road by Metro standards, and that was admitted by Roy Dale's associate tonight on another project. Don't take our word for that. Take the planning staff's word. The planning staff knew that road connection to the north was a bad plan, and they said so in their official 2017 report to this commission. We draw your attention to item number 2, which I don't have time to quote, but you can see it there. A road connection to the north may be impractical due to steep slopes and regrading required to construct a road that meets Metro standards. Given the environmental constraints that would prevent the application from creating additional street networks on the site, staff recommends approval of a variance to the maximum length of a dead-end street.
You can finish your sentence. I'm not that mean. I don't think I'm that mean.
Plain as day, the planning staff said the road connection to the north was worse than triple-length turnarounds. The second sentence nails it down. The Knob Hill special policies environmental constraints prevent building any street networks that weren't already on that 2017 single-access plan. Also in 2017, four experts.
That's the sentence.
I got one more sentence. One more sentence. We share the same name.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Anderson. I live at 1211 Watts Terrace. Excuse me? Well, we've gone through this a few times.
All right, start over.
Blaine Marvel, 820 Rustleo Drive. But don't take our word for that. Take the planning staff's word. The planning staff knew that the road connection to the north was the bad plan, and they said so in their own official 2017 report to this commission. We draw your attention to now item number 2 in your handout in plain black and white. Here is how the planning staff justified approving triple-length turnarounds and why they didn't ask you to approve the road connection to the north. From the planning staff 2017 report to the commission, quote, "A road connection to the north may be impractical due to steep slopes and the grading required to construct a road that meets Metro standards. Given the environmental constraints that would prevent the applicant from creating additional street networks on this site, staff recommends approval of a variance to the maximum length of a dead-end street standard," unquote. The planning staff said the road connection to the north was worse than triple-length turnarounds. The second sentence nails it down. The Knob Hill special policies environmental constraints prevent building any street networks that weren't already on that 2017 single access concept plan. Also in 2017, 4 experts came to the commission to advocate against road connection to the north. These experts were professionals whose job it is to build Nashville responsibly. These experts who advocated against the road connection to the north were planning staff member Abby Rickoff, Planning Staff Director Lucy Kemp, Attorney Tom White, and Engineer Roy Dale. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Tom Anderson. I live at 1211 Watts Terrace, backing up to this property. We draw your attention now to item number 3 on your handout. Here are the statements of those professional experts, transcribed word for word from the public access TV video of the Planning Commission meeting April 13th, 2017. Statement against the road connection. Planning staff member Abby Ritkoff told the commission, quote, "It would be difficult to connect to the north due to the needed grading, and further connections are not possible due to the surrounding development. Therefore, staff's recommendation is to approve the variance," unquote, the variance. Difficult grading, further connections are not possible. Statement against the North Road connection by engineer Roy Dale. He told the commission, quote, "We actually submitted a plan to the Public Works and Planning that showed extending this road to the north all the way to the property line. There's another road very close by that you could connect to. But what it really does, it goes over a steep area, it gets into sensitive slopes, it opens up areas for development that you really don't want to open up," unquote. Steep areas, sensitive slopes, developments you really don't want to open up. And really, I live there, and it's going to be very difficult to build back there. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm Billy Lipsey. I live at 5745 Knob Road. I've got a couple more quotes. It's quote night. From previous times, Engineer Roy Dale told the commission, quote, "The special policy on this property says that the environment features are more important and specifically says that they're more important than even the lot layout or extension of the roadways. If we extend the road to the property lines, I think it just gets into sensitive areas that we just don't want or need. And so as a result of that, planning is saying connectivity is not an issue on this property," unquote. I've got another one from Roy White saying the same. "The road to the north could be done very simply. It would basically be like Sherman coming through Atlanta. It would destroy the woods, the very thing of our special policy that says preserve environmental matters, urging that connectivity to the north would totally destroy that, the woods, the slope, everything. And it would connect the development to Charlotte. So you talk about traffic and issues, connecting that to the north, which we could have done, submitting us a proposal to Public Works to do that. It was pulled back by us because the very reason I'm talking about. It would have been a horrible proposal. Sherman coming through Atlanta. Destroy the woods, the slope, everything." Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Kelly Iamayo Mahalko. I'm at 6474 Fleetwood. The statement is against the North Road connection. Planning staff Lucy Kemp told the commission, quote, "When we approach any project in an infill area, very often one of the very first things we look at is its connectivity. Is there a place where the roads can connect? In this instance, we did look at whether or not there would be an opportunity to connect north, but as noted, we have slopes and other natural features up here. So we felt that on the whole and on balance, we had to look at this holistically, that we weigh the environmental features and protect those as we looked at this project. We had asked the applicant to remove lots from steep slope areas, and we had worked to protect other environmental features. So it seemed to us, as we balanced the environmental features on this site, the urban design considerations with the layout and the connectivity, that where we came down, just in terms of our thought process, was to protect the environmental features. And so, from our perspective, connectivity was possible to the north, but it seemed to us that it might undermine some of the other goals that we had for environmental stewardship. And we had certainly heard from the residents of great concern for the values of the wooded area and things of that nature. And so, once we said, okay, the connectivity to the north is maybe feasible, but from a policy perspective, might not holistically meet the other goals that we're interested in. That is how we arrived at basically recommending the variance, unquote.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your statements. I'm Mike Williams. I live at 6457 Fleetwood Drive, right up against the proposed subdivision. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, what you are considering tonight is a plan that all these experts, Abby Rickoff, Lucy Kemp, Attorney Tom White, Engineer Roy Dale, they all agree, these professional experts whose business it is to build Nashville responsibly, they all agree that this road connection to the north is a worse idea than the triple link turnarounds that you found faulty 2 years ago when you rejected the similar concept plan. We respectfully ask the Commission to honor Nob Hill policy. We ask you to reject this destructive North Road connection and vote no on this concept plan. And your no vote will give neighbors and the city a mandatory one-year period in which we can seek funding to buy this property and conserve it for the future of Nashville. We already have interest from Metro Parks, Greenways, and Open Space, and the Land Trust of Tennessee to put into action Metro Open Spaces policy specific intention for Nob Hill. Quote, should the existing use cease, the intent is for the site to be retained as open space and placed in public use if the opportunity should arise. Let us remind you that in 2017, one of your commissioners said about developing Nob Hill, this feels like trying to put a square peg into a round hole. Nob Hill, in its natural state, can benefit this whole city, perhaps as a public park, where generations of Nashvillians can find respite from the development that is crowding in all around them. Please make the wise choice. Let the opportunity arise for Nob Hill to serve Nashville better. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
David Parker, 820 Russell. Former planning staff executive director Robert Pasley is well known for saying there are some pieces of land that God put there to hold the rest together. Since Director Pasley made that a part of his credo, Nashville has grown and is growing faster than anybody could have predicted. The demand for growth is outstripping Metro Planning's oversight to shepherd projects according to plan, according to code, according to policies that strive to keep our city wonderful to live in and work in. Now more than ever before, it is hugely important to all of us in Nashville to preserve iconic pieces of land that God put here to hold the rest together. And if we don't save those parcels, if we don't carefully use them to benefit our children and grandchildren, we lose irreplaceable character in this city. Nob Hill, this rare pristine ridge in West Nashville, has all earmarks of being such an iconic place. Metro's open space policy about Nob Hill agrees with Robert Pasley. Open space policy about Nob Hill says, should the existing use cease, the intent is for the site to be retained as open space and placed in public use for the opportunity should arise. Please let that opportunity arise. Vote no today on Highland View, and you'll give us a mandatory one-year space of time to see if we can acquire this land and put Nob Hill to better public use.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi. I'm Kathy Baker. I live at 6811 Fleetwood Drive, down the road from the development. I'm also co-president of the Hillwood Neighborhood Association, which represents 1,100 homes, including the homes on Fleetwood adjacent to the proposed development. Our association has met, and we do not support Highland View subdivision. I'm asking you to vote no on Highland View because it violates the land use policy in the West Nashville Community Plan. There are several special policies that cover this property. One is the overall Hillwood and West Meade neighborhood special policy, which says, since this is an established area with limited opportunities for increasing the level of infrastructure, the density permitted within the current zoning districts should be maintained. Another, which covers this parcel specifically, says the character of the area is suburban, primarily single-family dwellings on parcels that are generally slightly less than 1 acre. Parcels created along Knob Road should maintain this pattern, although parcels created on new streets behind Knob Road could be slightly smaller. The applicant wants to develop lots that are 20,000 square feet. It's ludicrous to say 20,000 square foot lots are slightly smaller than 40,000 square foot lots. In 2008, the planning department came to us and asked, will you help us write the West Nashville Community Plan? And we did. I, along with many other West Nashville community members and the planning staff, spent months writing the plan and special policies within it, and were left with the belief that the language of these special policies would protect this property from this type of development. When we revisited the plan in 2015, no one, not the planning department, not the community, not the applicant, not the landowner, suggested there should be any change to these policies. When a development is inconsistent with the community plan, then there should be a community plan amendment. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Trish Bolian. I live on Hickory Valley Road.
I am here today to discuss concerns regarding Nob Hill and the surrounding area. I am not here today as a not in my backyard person. Nob Hill, in my view, is one of the most sensitive areas in Nashville, and we as a city must listen to these concerns. Impact 1. The tower was placed on this hill many decades ago to prevent any disaster in terms of a fall. The older tower was in a different site. It did fall, and it killed 4 people. Towers similar to this have fallen in cities such as Houston and caused death. No potential HOA here could cover or protect the potential residents, nor could or should they incur, along with this city, such a massive liability risk. Impact 2. Flooding already exists here, even without heavy rains. Stormwater measures in place do not address groundwater. On this ridge, bubbling underground surface water is seen with the naked eye, even on sunny days. Impact 3. The height of these ridges, the solid rock, and the ecosystems would all have to undergo blasting. The blasting codes in Metro are such that all the way down the ridges, as well as the immediate area, will be disastrously impacted. We know this because the quarries on Robertson Road have impacted many of our homes over these years. I was one of the people that worked on all of, starting in 2008, the planning efforts to try to protect the land in view of growth, and I can ask you to not approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Ruth Cirillo. I live at 6473 Fleetwood Drive. The planning staff's report to the Commission on Highland View says that none of the lots are on critical slope over 20%. We believe that's wrong. The proof is the Planning Department's own 2017 slope map of this part of Nob Hill, which we obtained from Planning's project folder for the failed Highland View at Nob Hill subdivision. According to Planning's 2017 slope map, critical slopes on the Highland View development that you're considering tonight are actually a good bit more extensive than you see on the 2019 concept plan. Planning's 2017 slope map shows that some of the 2019 concept plan's lots actually are on critical slopes over 20% grade. For example, most of Lot 14 is on slopes 20% or greater, and part of that same lot is on slopes greater than 25%. And on Lot 15, the whole middle of the lot is at least 20% slope, some of it more than 25%. According to the planning slope map, a 200-foot-long section of the westward cul-de-sac street will have to be built on slope greater than 25%. Also part of Lot 26 and much of 28 contains slopes greater than 20%. We urge the Planning Commission to dig deep and figure out these discrepancies between Planning's 2017 slope map and the 2019 Highland View concept plan. Because unless Nob Hill has miraculously flattened out over the last 2 years, there may be something fishy about the 2019 concept plan that's before you tonight. I ask you, please do not approve this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Miriam Leibowitz. I live at 5621 Meadowcrest Lane in the neighborhood just across from this proposed development. When I came before you 2 years ago, I was the president of the White Bridge Neighborhood Association, which has almost 4,000 residents. In the December 2nd, 2002, the city paper article, Church to Build Next to WSMV by Judith R. Tackett said, building chairman Lou Alvarez from Highland Park Church said the church will only utilize about 10 of the 66.5 acres, leaving the remaining land undeveloped. 3 years later, plan by Vail Resorts to build a large group of RS-20 homes was dropped while John Summers was Metro Council member of District 24. I'd like to remind the Planning Commission of your mission statement to guide the future growth and development for Nashville and Davidson County to evolve into a more socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable community with a commitment to preservation of important assets, effective use of public infrastructure, distinctive and diverse neighborhood character, free and open civic life, and choices in housing and transportation. Some of you guys are familiar to me from when we were here 2 years ago. Some of you are new. We just hope that you will take into true consideration the nature of this hill, the impact that it has on all of us surrounding it, including those of us who live across the street from Richland Creek, which tends to flood pretty much all the time. 8 houses at the end of my cul-de-sac flooded and 3 were torn down as a result of the floods 9 years ago. We don't want to see a rehash of this because of development on this hillside. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Michael Aldridge. I live at 798 Watts Lane. I have some multiple copies of a survey I had done in October of 17 showing my property.
Thank you.
My point is, it's going to be short and direct to the point. My name is Mike Aldridge. I live at the very farthest dead end of Watts Lane, where the projected north connector is. I've had my land surveyed. Part of Watts Lane dead end street is actually my private property. If you look at that survey, it belongs to me. If they build that corner big enough for fire trucks to make that turn, part of that turn will be on my private property. I'm not going to let them do this unless they buy my whole lot, my house. That's all I have to say about that. If you want to meet me and discuss price, I'll sell you my land. Otherwise, there's no deal. I have a larger print if one of the commissioners would like to look at it.
Is it a copy? I don't want to take it.
It's the same. It's a copy of what I just passed out to you.
We can get it. We appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate you coming in. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Kirkendall. I am a member of the steering committee of the White Bridge Neighborhood Association. I'm also a homeowner on Maudina Avenue. My property backs up to the Channel 4 tower. In addition to the comments that have been made by the people before me, which I fully support, I also would like to speak about the safety involved with being as near to the tower as we are. A letter was sent to Ms. Rickoff from Vice President and General Manager of WSMV asking that this plan be disapproved because of the issue with ice forming on the tower and the fact that homes on Maudina Avenue were hit with falling ice. That happened with just a small wind. I have pictures of the ice. These were not tiny pieces of ice. These were large 2 to 3 foot pieces of ice. I'd be happy to show you those pictures. Those hit our homes, they hit our cars, they also nearly hit us if we were outside. It's very dangerous with only a wind. In addition to that, we've had another safety issue with the Channel 4 tower. In June of 2017, lead paint came off of the tower. We know it was lead paint because we had it tested. The whole neighborhood was carpeted in large lead paint chunks, and we finally convinced Channel 4 to hire Gobble Hayes Architecture and Engineer, or Environmental and Architecture, apologize for that, to come in and clear up the lead paint. Unfortunately, by the time they were hired, those chips had already soaked into much of the ground, so a lot of that had gone away. So there is lead in the ground around that tower and in the area that is proposed for this development. So, very distinct safety concerns. I ask that you disapprove this plan, and if anyone would like to see these pictures of the ice, I'm happy to show them to you.
Well, we'd be glad if you'll send them to Lucy, the director.
All right. I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Tom Hibbett. I live at 106 DeMoss Road. My property adjoins the WSMV property. As the Planning Commission knows, the neighborhoods around Nob Hill have got traffic outlets at White Bridge Road and Charlotte, and not much else. If you've ever tried to drive from Harding to Charlotte on White Bridge Road during certain times of day, you're going to have a crossword puzzle with you and plenty of time to work it as you sit through 6 or 8 lights. The traffic from Charlotte on White Bridge Road will back up all the way to the Tennessee Technical Institute there. And I'd like to remind the Commission that currently this neighborhood already has actual hundreds of new residential units under construction, units that have not yet been moved into, units whose automobile traffic has not yet flowed on top of the traffic that we already have. This proposal suggests around 40 units, which would probably be about 80 cars. It doesn't seem like a big increment, but I'd like to ask the Commission, is there a point at which a neighborhood can say, we feel like we've absorbed enough of Nashville's growth? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Willy Horniger, 6522 Rolling Fork Drive. You have all heard already that these hills are heavily wooded and have potential steep slopes. But they have also a lot of trees with a caliber of 8 inches and larger. So that's just as an introduction. I want to draw your attention now to parcels 2225 on the concept map and 28 and 29 up to Watts Lane. They lie in a heavily wooded area on an approximately 15-degree slope. They are narrow, especially parcels 22 to 25. To build dwellings there on these parcels, it will require a lot of cut and fill. And it would be impossible to save all these trees which grow there if buildings are allowed, and that would lead to diminution of that entire hill. And that cannot be done. There is no other way to cut these trees. Moreover, you all know that over the last years, Nashville has experienced an unprecedented loss of its tree canopy. So the development of that hill would add to this loss and would set a precedent that building wherever is seen as a priority over concerning our remaining woods. And this hill is very important, as you have heard from other people. The concept plan needs to be not deferred, but is trashed. And the new concept plan should be developed. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Renee Laspina, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager of WSMV, and we're at 5700 Knob Road. Meredith Corporation, DBA WSMV, simply asks that the Planning Commission and the developer assist WSMV in making future homeowners aware of the risks of falling ice and encourage the developer to coordinate carefully with SMV for any blasting activity if you approve this. We ask that the correspondence be placed into public record of this proceeding so that future homeowners may learn of the risks of falling ice from towers, and specifically the risk of falling ice to the Highland View subdivision from the SMV tower. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kathy Cloninger. I live at 6457 Fleetwood, and thank you for your patience. Neighbors don't get much opportunity to have a voice in this, and so we've got our energy, and just bear with us. I'm speaking on behalf of the complicated water systems that you've heard a little bit about on Nob Hill. The planning staff report to the commission says that the stream and the stream buffer at the front of the site are not located on any of the proposed lots, and so says the GIS map. The land, however, tells a very different story. Many of us have walked the land. The stream actually extends northward, likely through lots 1 and lots 31, all the way to the easement for the TV tower cables just below the proposed middle turnaround. Two sources feed that northern stream. One is an active spring that bubbles out of the limestone right beside the middle TV cable anchor. Another is two watercourses that come down through lots 11, comes down through 11 more lots, through lot number 20 to lot 30, along both sides of the proposed road going northward. When it rains, those watercourses send runoff to feed the main stream. In addition to runoff during rain, water is constantly seeping out of this entire hill. Nob Hill itself is an aquifer. It fills and seeps whenever there's rain. If you have a hydrologist study the water issues on Nob Hill, she'll tell you that there's more water flowing underground through the rocks than along the surface. And if you grade the land, you can disturb and expose those hidden flows. Please say no on this subdivision.
Thank you. Welcome.
Steve Jordan, 601 Kendall Drive. I bought my property in 1996 when all this was just considered Channel 4 woods. I submitted documents to the commission beforehand. You may have these in a folder or something. My property's downhill away from this, but it's in the stormwater runoff path. My exact lot, which I've owned for over 20 years, is bounded on two sides by a big city ditch that carries the stormwater runoff both from the Highland Park Church and from Channel 4. The developer proposes with this project to bring the water down to Knob Road and then from Knob Road down toward White Bridge Road. That ditch, which runs along one side of White Bridge Road, comes to my property and makes an exact 90-degree turn. That's about approximately 150 feet of city ditch before it makes a more rounded curve and then goes into a deeper ditch and back and under Kendall Drive and then down to Richland Creek somewhere. And what I would like to say is that 150 feet where it makes that hard 90 is inadequate presently in a flash flood. And so what I ask, it's not going to service 40 houses and all the infrastructure uphill of this church. It's just not going to do it. And so what I ask is that the commission disapprove the plan and make the developer come down there and look at just that 150 feet where it has to make that hard right turn, the stormwater runoff, and remediate that or do something about it so that to address the stormwater runoff from this project. That's right where I live. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, Commission. My name is Jincy Worley. I'm a steering committee member of White Bridge Neighborhood Association, and I live at 131 DeMoss Road, which is northeast of the proposed development. My small neighborhood includes DeMoss Road, Osceola, Maudina, and Burgess Avenues, and we experience significant flooding of yards and ponding of roads due to the lack of infrastructure, constant construction West Nashville's going through, increased density, reduction in pervious surfaces, and runoff from higher elevations like West End Community Church, which is directly across from my home, and also Nob Hill. I have documented these stormwater conditions occurring this year and shared with Metro Stormwaters, met with them on my property, and Council Lady Roberts. I am concerned that the large proposed subdivision will exacerbate these current issues. Additionally, neighbors are concerned that the process in which this concept could be approved limits transparency and involvement by neighbors and subsequent iterations of the design. I have firsthand experience with the developer on my street significantly changing the design of their SP, and even when relevant Metro departments have been engaged for assistance on our street, taking time off work to be there with them, we are told that changes being made are minor. Changes to overall building footprints, roads, protected trees to remain are not minor. My concern is this was an example that was an SP with neighborhood input and lots of oversight. How can we expect the process where there's little oversight, where this doesn't go in front of council, where there's not an SP with safeguards? How can we expect that to go well when we haven't seen other sites go well? I'm asking you to please vote no and disapprove this concept plan with a subdivision cluster lot option. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Chairman, Commission, my name is Kyle Miller, and I live on DeMoss Road, across from the development, just outside of the tower. And I support the 1-year waiting period to purchase the land for park use. This is a beautiful area. There's very few areas like this left in Nashville. It's tall woods, it's natural forest that has been there longer than any of us or any of our families have been here. And it deserves to be preserved. There, of course, there's deer up there, there's wild turkey up there. It's just, it's part of what makes Nashville, Nashville. It's the soul of Nashville. I would ask that you disapprove the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Baker. I live at 6811 Fleetwood Drive. I want to call your attention to an email dated February the 15th, 2019 from the Vice President and General Manager of Channel 4, which you have already heard from tonight. In that email, she expresses a concern about falling ice from the tower. The email states that there were 2 instances of dangerous ice chunks falling from the tower. One was on November the 16th, 2018, when the ice chunks fell 700 feet away from the tower to land in the Channel 4 main studio parking lot. The second one was on December the 11th, 2018, when the ice chunks fell 650 feet away from the tower, hitting homes on Madia Avenue, and you've already heard from a resident of this street. This proposed plan only allows for a safety radius of 500 feet around the tower. These 2 falling instances, which are in just 1 year, were over the safety radius and could have hit Road D on the plan and houses to the east of Road D. I am asking you to not approve this plan based upon the existing safety concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Joan Palmer. I live at 5406 Burgess Avenue, and I'm a steering committee member of the White Bridge Neighborhood Association. I live on the other side of White Bridge, but I can tell you, the water, when it comes off the hills now, floods White Bridge Road. That big rain we had back in February, there was like 6-8 inches of water planing on the road. And when I get into my neighborhood side, like they said, you have to use a puzzle just to get over from one side of White Bridge, from one side of Knob to the other. I have to work my way around and hope I can get to the traffic light and then go through and go a back way up to my house. I disapprove. I would hope you would disapprove this plan for other reasons too. I grew up in New Jersey. Where I lived, there were 7 farms. They're all gone. When this land if it's gone for good. You cannot get it back in a blink of an eye. You have to consider that what's happening to our county is growing by leaps and bounds, and we're losing precious space. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Duncan Ragsdale. I live at 6453 Fleetwood Drive. I live next door to the empty lot that burned down 3 years ago because the fire trucks couldn't get up the hill. This was the same problem as last time. I scraped up $7,000 and put a French drain behind my house to stop the water from running down the hill. The blasting from the Nashville West Shopping Center has cracked my house, my front porch, my foundation, and that's a mile away. We are not against development. None of us are. We want this to be right. We don't want this to happen to our homes. We're really terrified about all this stuff being on top of the hill, running down and shaking our houses and ruining it. That's all it is. I don't want to be redundant. I don't want to keep going on about this. I would like to ask everyone here tonight, if you're against or opposed to this development, to please raise your hand. And I would like to ask all of you to please stand with us and oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Keith Wallace. I live at 842 Rusleo Drive. I've lived in Nashville for 30 years. I've seen the rainwater runoff problems we have as a city. I live downhill from this proposal, and I would just ask you to disapprove of this and put this to bed and finish it.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi there. Can I pass these out? I'm not sure what I'm supposed to ask.
Yes.
Should we call on somebody else to go first?
Well, how about this? How about while you sort out the paperwork, we'll get somebody else to go and then.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. Come on up. 2 minutes. We could do it
Hey.
quietly. Thank you.
I'm Heather Weber. I live at 797 Elysian Fields Road, and thank you all for your time and consideration of this evening. I just sort of wanted to say that all of the reasons that have already been very well elucidated for you are of primary concern to me. The water runoff around Knob Hill is a serious problem with flooding of personal homes and properties. It is very steep there. It would be extremely difficult to build there. It is also the blasting that would have to happen in order to do the building that is proposed here could damage the properties that are already in existence there. And it is dangerous. You've already heard that the tower there would make it dangerous. So I urge you to vote no, to disapprove this plan, and to preserve and to protect that area. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't think any of you heard a word I said.
No, we did. We were listening. All right, come on up.
Hi there, I'm Rob Jeplicki, and I apologize for being so disorganized. The letter, I've given you a sheet. There are 2 sheets you should have. I'm sorry, I'm Rob Jeplicki. I live at 6453 Fleetwood Drive. I'm the co-chairman of Neighbors for Knob Hill. I was under the impression, and we didn't secure this, that I would have 5 minutes. I have 2 minutes, so I'm just going to make it quick. If you have the handout, I asked you to go to page 5 through 7. And that basically what that shows is the damage that has been incurred on Knob Road based on the flooding that has happened from the runoff from the Highland Park Church. The Highland Park Church has paid for and been doing their own, as some of the people here have told you, they've dealt with a lot of the runoff. The development is probably 5 times the size. If you look at what's happening on Knob Road, if you look at what's happening on Osceola, they're on opposite sides of Knob Hill. There was flooding on Knob Road that didn't happen before this church was built, before they clear cut and built their church. The same thing has happened on the other side with West End Community, where they actually sold property to the church so that they could build the road. So these two churches, one church sold property to the other so they could build this road on Watts Lane. There is runoff coming from the West End Community Church that is affecting the development and affecting roads on the opposite side. So the bottom line for us is we have serious concerns about what is under the hill. We have serious concerns about what's on top of the hill. I was at the meeting 2 years ago. The gentleman from Meredith was asked questions about you guys, which he couldn't answer because he wasn't a property owner 50 years ago. Let me say one thing about this. I'm sorry. This is a 700-foot diameter from the center of where the tower stands. If you look at that in context of the development, that shows you that it crosses into the street. That 700 feet is what is mentioned in this letter regarding the ice fall off, okay? So I'm going to wrap up here. Oh, I have 5 minutes. Well, now I'm going to slow it down a little bit. I am so sorry. I didn't look at the clock. I thought I was supposed to sign something. I apologize. Thank you very much.
We try to be lenient and fair.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. So if you will please look, if you have this, if you will look at pages 5 through 7, you can see some of the things that have, actually, let's go, I'm sorry. So on pages 7 and 8, you can see some of the issues regarding Highland Park Church. You can see there's seepage from under their parking lot on the bottom of page 7. That is something that happens after the fact, and that is why they have what they have to collect water in the front. In February, we had floods, like everybody did, on Knob Road that pretty much took over everybody's property on Knob Road. I've spoken to neighbors who lived there before us. We lived there in 2004. These sort of things didn't happen before that property was cleared. Again, I say, when you look at this, and you see where the church is, you see how much property they cleared for that church, and compare it to how much, we're hearing that the trees are going to stand, but there's going to be asphalt, there's going to be cement, there's going to be rooftops. And what that problem doesn't address is how it's going to compound what's downhill from it. I'll take you back up, those who have these, to pages 5 and 6. That is, that parking lot on page 5 is for West End Community Church. This is from a Google Maps. This photo was taken in 2017. If you look on the right, that's a giant sinkhole on Knob Hill. It has been since filled in and fixed. That's right near DeMoss. That's right near Osceola. And part of the issue, there are issues with this property that we have concerns with. When we originally came to you, we asked for a deferment so we could get professionals involved in this, engineers and people that we think should be involved. The problem we have is once this is passed through the Planning Commission, we no longer will have a say-so in how this goes. And we have serious concerns based on some of the things we've seen in the area, some of the things that have happened at Osceola where there's been a house there, a development there for 2 years that they've been trying to develop because of flood, and they've had flood conditions, and the developers had to spend $100,000 in order to deal with the water problem. The water problem is directly related to West End Community Church building on building on Knob Hill. So there's a lot of things I could share with you. I don't do this for a living. I spent hundreds of hours trying to get the proper information. My job requires me to be factually based. I'm not against development. I'm against development that we believe is not the right development for the property. WSMV has weighed in, and when this started 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the first thing everybody said is, how can you build with the tower? You've heard the information here tonight. I still say, how can you build with that tower? So as for me personally, my feeling is based on everything I know and have studied regarding the Knob Hill property, including the original reason the tower was built on this hill, this specific concept should not be allowed to happen. Thank you for your time. Sorry for being so disorganized. I hope there's not a next time, but if there is, I'll be better.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Hi, my name is Ashley Prince. I live at 5719 Stoneway Trail. So everything that I was going to say has already been said, but I would like to mention that, so in 2010, when the flood happened, I was put on a special project where I went and I spoke with all the worst situations. And I had moved here from LA, and something that I'd never seen before was every single person that I spoke to, and these were the worst of the worst, okay, said, we have it bad, but you need to go talk to the person right over there because they have it worse. And this happened again and again and again. I've never seen anything like it. I saw people showing up day after day, week after week, month after month, for people that they didn't know. And what that taught me is where value in a community stands. It's not in the structures we built. We saw those get destroyed. But I'll tell you where our value in this city lies. It's in all of these people right here. Over the last 2 years, we have come together as a community. We care about the environment. We care about our turkeys. We care about each other. We care about our neighbors who are getting flooded, because that's what community does. And that's who Nashville is. And I pray that we can all remember that, you know, it's not the person in Texas that comes in and puts the money in. They have no skin in this game. But it's all of us that have homes here, that care about each other, that show up, that help raise each other's kids. This is what matters, and I really hope that you will consider deferring this, letting us look at if we can buy the property, turn it into an open space that's good for everybody, because I think that that is the greatest good for this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No outbursts, please. Y'all know the rules are you can't clap or cheer or any of that, so
Hello.
thank you. You're
Repeat
back.
offender, Elise Hudson, 4601 Whites Creek Pike. A few questions that I would ask that I'm interested in knowing on this one. I know that there are subdivision regulations and in the metro ordinance on cluster lots about the perimeter lots and the lots that are oriented towards the existing roads. Don't have to necessarily be on those existing roads, but I believe the cluster lot says that any of those lots oriented towards existing roads need to at least be 90% of the surrounding parcels, and the subdivision regulations, I know some of this is not maintenance, but some of those talk about the perimeter parcels being at least 70% of the surrounding parcel size as well. I would be interested to know if it meets the tree preservation parts of the subdivision regulations, and I would also be interested to confirm that the recreation areas that they have are not in any of the critical areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? No, we'll have the rebuttal and then the council lady. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in all that discussion, I don't think I heard anything about this not meeting a subdivision regulation. I mean, I think they had valid concerns. I listened to what they had to say, but there's nothing that's telling you that this does not meet the requirements of a subdivision. There is one thing that I did hear that I wanted to clarify. And there was a lot of discussion about this connection and how this connection couldn't occur in the prior application that was submitted. It's because we went to the adjacent property owner. The only thing we could get was like a 50-foot easement, and there was no way that you could go over that hillside and stay within the grading of that 50-foot easement. So the church has actually now acquired a very large, wide piece of property, so they can achieve that. In the prior analysis from Planning Commission, they never said it couldn't be done. They said it might not be feasible or it might be difficult. But now with the width of this property that's been purchased, it can easily be accomplished. So I just want to make sure you understand that. This is not a rezoning. I think we need to do a better job. Maybe I need to do a better job. I've had a lot of meetings with this community. I've tried to explain to them the process of a subdivision. It's a perfunctory process. Many things that you've heard about, SPs or rezoning, or even I think one gentleman talked about easements and how you can purify or solidify those. I mean, it can only be done with a plat. It can only be done with a final development plan, not a concept plan, and not at this point. So all those easements would be established when you do the construction plans. I think a lady talked about maybe streams on the property extending further than Metro's GIS. Metro's GIS is not that accurate. That's why we have to survey property. That's why we have to determine exactly where these encumbrances might be. The Metro GIS on steep slopes is highly inaccurate. That's why we have to do topographic surveys to establish slopes exactly as they are And so when a plan comes back before you, it cannot have a critical lot, and it's not going to penetrate a steep slope. So I would hope that you would recommend this for approval based upon the staff's comment that it does recommend, does meet the requirements of the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Lady? Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you all. Thank you for the job you do. We sure appreciate it. I've got another 30 or 40 things on the agenda that I've got half of District 20 coming out for tomorrow, so I think this is going to be, you're going to get to see all of this. What I would like for you to look at is page 63. The evolving policy is incorrect. It's actually maintenance and preservation. And so what I think we're talking about is, do you all see what I'm talking, where I'm looking on page 63? It was incorrectly put in the agenda as evolving. See where I'm, you'll see where I'm looking?
I see, just to make sure, under the community character manual policy, the site is in T3 neighborhood maintenance, T3 neighborhood evolving, and conservation.
That's incorrect.
Is that what you're referring to?
It's not evolving.
The small portion up near Watts Lane is in evolving. It's a very small part of it, but it does have a small bit of evolving within the area.
It's on Watts Lane, but the property that we're actually talking
Sure.
about isn't evolving. So I think that's a real good, a huge differentiation, because when you're talking about the property that we're talking about, the subdivision regulation, it is not evolving. So I think that's relative. And the part about on the other side of Watts Lane, it is. But also, if you would flip over on page 67, it has, on number 1 under the conditions, it talks about how prior to final plat approval, the bond or improve Watts Lane. Well, if they're going to have to bond or improve it, these are 17-foot roads. These are not going to be, the feasibility, they're not going to end up fixing these roads. And if you're talking about 1,000+ cars a day going up and down these roads, they can't take it. This isn't something, if you all were to drive out there, it's not feasible. And so when you're talking about bonding or improving, I think that's a pretty relevant point. I'll point out that of all my constituents that came out today, there was no one that came out that was for this project. And the reason being is this is not something that the community wants. We are now in a situation, and many times this comes up, that it's the developers versus the people who live in these communities. And I'm asking you to take that in consideration. And Roy's right. We haven't talked about subdivision regulations tonight, but we're talking about right and wrong in a way, because we're looking at a community. You're hearing them talk about their heartfelt need. You're hearing them talk about their neighborhood, their backyards, and it's for development. And I know we're looking at one project, but if we could look at the city as a whole, if we could look at this and take into consideration what we're doing, what we're letting development do to our neighborhoods, it's overwhelming. And at the end of the day, we can say that Metro Water and Stormwater is going to protect us, but I have the nations. I have Charlotte Park, which has Sandy Creek. I have Osceola. Metro Water can't protect us. Stormwater can't protect us. They may want to, and he may say that all the regulations are going to come in and it's going to be approved. It's going to cause a problem that we can't undo. Once the spell is rung, it's done. So I'm asking you is to listen to them. Listen to the WSMV folks. Those shards of ice that come off of those towers literally have punctured the roofs. It's a safety issue. Putting these under these towers, we're creating something with a 17-foot road, putting 1,000 cars a day, and having shards of ice coming down from these towers. We're creating something that was unforeseen. And when we did Nashville Next, this made sense, but it doesn't now. Nashville Next, it was for a city that was not in this boom that we're in right now. This plan is not for this area. And I don't have any criticism for the people who worked really hard on this. A lot of my constituents did work really hard on Nashville Next, but it's no longer applicable. And this is not something that we can do. And just because they can build it by right doesn't mean that it's right. So let's try to look past. I know you all have been sitting here a long time and hearing these heartfelt pleas, but I'm asking you to try to look at this as a whole. Yes, they technically, we did not talk about the subdivision regulations, but I've walked that trail, and these 8-inch caliper trees, you can't go from point A to point B. There is no straight path. They are going to have to cut down these trees. Unless they zig and zag through that road, there is absolutely no way to do this. I'm asking you to disapprove this, and I guess I'm asking you as much as anything from an emotional standpoint, because this is not something that we can prove. You're right, he's right. We can't come up here and prove to you that this subdivision regulation, and I know that's what you're voting on, it is inappropriate. But I'm telling you, this is something that will impact a community for the next 100 years. So I'm asking you that, and I'm asking you because I also have a rock quarry in my district, and when they're talking about the blasting is not going to affect them, it is going to affect them. It's going to affect them greatly. And you can't, once the boom goes off on these rock quarries, it's impossible to go back and measure that. So even though I think Roger's group who has my rock quarry is extremely responsible, they still make mistakes. There's cracks all over my area from those rock quarries. So that's not true. So we're talking about a lot of safety issues, and we're talking about a lot of things that are kind of things that you can't regulate. So with that, I ask that you disapprove this, please.
Thank you, Council Lady. Appreciate you coming down. And seeing no one else wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed.
Mr. Chairman, may I make an offer of proof for the record? The standard for review is not necessarily the subdivision regulations. The law is the most restrictive regulations on book control. And here that would be Nashville Next and the community plans.
Thank you. Vice Chair, you want to go first?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a point of order real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the speakers mentioned that our firm did some environmental work out there. Should I recuse myself? Or ask the council?
Yeah, we should ask the council. The work was, as I understand it, was on the tower.
Yeah, I don't know any have direct knowledge of what we did, but it was an environmental assessment of.
Yeah, let's ask the council.
Kind of like lead paint or something on the interior?
Well, I think the question would be whether you had a financial interest and also whether that would affect your decision today. I think the financial interest part is probably there, so it may be best that you do recuse yourself. But
you know, we always try to make sure that we don't have a conflict of interest. It would, you know, upon council looking at it, we always try to be safe from that. So it'd probably be good if you recuse yourself.
Happy to do so.
For the record.
Thank you.
All right.
Shall I leave?
You should probably leave.
We'll come get you.
We'll come get you. I'm glad you listened through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, facts come to light, and you didn't know, so we understand. We try to be safe. All right.
May I ask a question as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Point of order.
For the council, while we've got him, as a point of order.
Yeah, sure.
About the last attorney that was here telling us that subdivisions doesn't supersede the most restrictive law, which is Nashville Next. What is your opinion about that?
that's something I've not have heard. And our opinion is that the subdivision regulations are what control. I think the subdivision regulations were put in place to be harmonious, and in the way that they were developed, it puts it into compliance with Nashville Next. So I would respectfully disagree with that.
Any other questions before we get started? Make sure everybody's comfortable. Questions? Vice Chair, you want to go first? Does that answer your question, Commissioner? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Go first with questions.
Yeah, well, I
Lots of
mean,
questions.
you know how we start this discussion. And
Okay, so I guess I think we do need to reiterate what our counsel just stated, and I guess I would just ask for another clarification from staff on our role with subdivisions, but with a different angle, and that is, how do we incorporate whether or not there are health and safety concerns? or perceived health and safety concerns that need further exploration, and how does that impact our role with subdivision regulations?
Sure. I thought reading the previous comments was very creative, and they were accurately portrayed. You didn't ask me that, but I just want to acknowledge that. The commission disagreed with my recommendation a year and a half or two ago, whenever that was heard. So the commission ultimately made that decision. So we're here looking at a different plan. So state law authorizes this planning commission to create, publicly notice, and ultimately enforce subdivision regulations. They're simply the division of land under existing entitlements. So there is no entitlement, no rezoning associated with this. It is simply where the location of streets, lot orientation, block structure, and the like, and how those function. And those are all defined within the subdivision regulations in detail. And so the commission's role here is more administrative. Whereas the first case we heard this evening, didn't weigh in on, was a zoning case. In that instance, the commission would be applying policy. With respect to subdivisions, which is what we're hearing now, the role of policy is very limited. Nashville Nexus policy, it's an advisory document that gives us advice and guides our advice on zoning decisions. And so for subdivisions, the policy simply directs us to the portion of the subdivision regulations that apply. So it's more limited. State law says we're to guard the health and welfare of our citizens and do that through development of subdivision regulations. And so that's why it's really important that we have stormwater, public works, and other departments to look at each plan to ensure that the health and safety and welfare from those different professional aspects is addressed. And so you'll see in the staff report conditions from those different metro departments that have purview over those types of issues, so that we can ensure that each and every project meets the regulations that govern development in this city. Does that?
Yes, that helps. And I think in a moment I would ask for someone from Stormwater to come up. But I guess the one area that I don't know if we can address relates to the tower and the statement that's been made about the ice coming off the lines and the impact that that's had. And if the drawings are accurate, it looks like that's covering a significant portion of the, or a significant number of the lot. So has anybody looked at that? Or who would look at that?
Sorry, so I'm opening up an email that I received from Erica Garrison, who is the attorney of record for WSMV. Obviously, they're not here. And she asked me to read a comment into the record. WSMV TV does not oppose the proposal. We do, however, ask that the Planning Commission and the developer assist WSMV TV in making future homeowners aware of the risks of falling ice and encourage the developer to coordinate carefully. And so I think your question is perhaps to what extent do we weigh that in a subdivision review? Is that what I'm hearing? Or a concern about?
I mean, it's just a general concern because I don't, I mean, we're saying that each individual department is weighing in and saying how this is, but no department has weighed in to specifically on that item.
So it's my understanding from an exchange with her that there are radius requirements, but they're not here on the record. And so that could be a question that you might have that you want to further pursue, how the radiuses are defined. And I would want a technical expert to address that. My understanding is that it's 500, and that's what's shown in the plan. But I think if you wanted to probe in more detail, we would need to pose that perhaps to the applicant or to another expert as you to answer the question.
Okay. Can we talk about stormwater, since that was obviously one of the major topics brought up?
So this...
State your name and who you're with.
I'm Logan Bowman. I'm with Metro Stormwater. I did a little research. Sorry. I did a little research. There are quite a few homes across the road that had called in drainage complaints in February, and Stormwater has done quite a few projects in that area. But Stormwater feels that on this site there are multiple drainage basins, and as with every development that we approve, we're not going to allow them to increase the flow off-site. So they are proposing now to put in multiple bioretention basins around the site that will reduce the runoff and also treat the water, so that way it's clean water coming off the site. And we'll do that before the time of final approval of a grading permit.
So, and if trees are removed, how do we factor that into it? Because wouldn't that theoretically increase the runoff in a way that we can't currently
So what
predict?
the engineer is going to do is they're going to give us a report that says it's called a curve number. And so they're going to give us a curve number for the whole site and each individual drainage basin and say, here's the land cover now, here's what the curve number is, here's the amount of flow that's coming off. And then they're going to submit a post-development one that's going to show it without trees, with houses, with driveways. And as the applicant said, we're also going to get an infill plan for each lot too. So we're going to have rain gardens, French drains, and all their downspouts from the homes are going to be tied into that to further reduce the runoff.
Okay. So that's another question is around the infill requirements. And maybe I'm not understanding or reading that in the conditions, but is that something that's in the conditions, or should it be in the conditions officially?
I'm sorry, go ahead. It's included as a note on the plan. So oftentimes we won't be duplicative in regards to including a condition that's already incorporated on the plan.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else, can I ask others? I have other questions, but while we have stormwater here, can I ask if anyone else has, any other commissioners want to ask questions of stormwater?
Sure. Does it? Any other
stormwater related questions? Okay. They may call you back.
Okay.
So now about the steep slopes that have been referenced. How do we evaluate that? What's our policy around the steep slopes? Is that something that staff can address?
So our slope maps that we have with our GIS records, they're more of a composite map, and they represent generally where steep slopes are, and they categorize them by under 20%, 20 to 25%, and over 25%. They're general, they can't get down to the specifics. It gives us an indication when we're reviewing a plan so that we have an understanding of the baseline of where we are, where are areas that we should be concerned about, that we should look further into. When an applicant submits a survey that is field verified, we rely on the applicant's information because they go out and look at the field and go out on site and make those determinations. Our level and any slopes that we have are more general.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get all of that information with the next step, the next phase, which is the final development plan.
But staff, could you clarify whether there are critical lots on this plan, how those are defined, and then how we would review those specifically, I think with respect to slopes?
Yes, so the applicant has to identify any lots that would qualify as critical lots. So those are lots that contain natural areas of 20% or more slopes, if they're located in floodplain, if they have problem soils. All of that would have to be identified on the plan up front. If there are any critical lots, it's not saying that you can't develop those, but they go through an additional review called a critical lot plan. And before any permits are issued, that's separate from the master development plan, but those lots have to go through individually and provide ways that they're managing the stormwater and methods of mitigating future development. And the critical lot plan would be reviewed by planning and stormwater. But in this instance, there are no critical lots that have been identified on the plans.
Okay. Okay. Can we talk about the road issue as well? And the different statements that have been made about whether or not the road can be put in as, you know, the neighborhood has basically said it doesn't work, and the applicant has said it is now feasible. But can we address that? And then what the difference, I don't think I understand the difference in the bonded and improved construction.
Sure. Let me talk just a little bit about the difference between the plan now and the plan prior that didn't include the connection to Watts Lane. Following the last decision, the developer has obtained the rights to more property adjacent to Watts Lane, which makes it feasible for a connection. At the time of the review, staff said that it may be problematic, but at that time they didn't even have access to or frontage along, and so we review the plans that are, we review the facts that are on hand at that time. So Public Works has also reviewed this plan and has recommended approval, and has included a condition to say that Watts Lane would be improved from this access to Charlotte to at least a 20-foot width. It ranges from from 16 to 18 in places up to 20. That would all be within existing public right-of-way. So there's enough right-of-way width to provide for the widening of that to a minimum of 20 feet. And so we have included that as a condition per Public Works. In regards to the bonding versus building, bonding is essentially a temporary step before building. So at times you will have a plat come in and be approved, and they will record it and bond improvements, either new roads or off-site improvements will be included in a bond that's held until those improvements are made. And so it's generally kind of a holding pattern to ensure that the improvements are made.
So the improvements will be made.
Right. That's what's required. Yes.
Okay. I guess 2 other quick questions. So the council lady brought up the fact that it was really neighborhood maintenance for the majority of the property and neighborhood evolving just for the little part. What difference would it have made if the entire property was neighborhood maintenance?
So both neighborhood evolving and neighborhood maintenance point us to Section 3 of the subdivision regulations, the conventional standards. There is a difference for maintenance if you have lots along an existing street, which this does not have any lots that front along an existing street. So the standards of review are the same.
Okay. And then I guess last thing, Mr. Dale provided us with the information with for WSMV. If this goes forward, does this need to be included as a condition? I mean, the fact that they're going to provide this assessment for WSMV, I don't know if that's something that needs to officially go in the record.
Yes, I think depending on, yes, if this
Okay.
moves forward, I would include that as a condition, yes.
I'm going to let others ask some questions.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Well, Commissioner Farr did a great job of asking a lot of questions. I had one follow-up question. One, I do think there seems to be enough question marks around the tower safety radius issue that we probably should follow up on that, maybe with another study. One thing that I know you spoke about this a little bit, but if you could just explain more of the process. So if this concept plan were to be approved, whether today, at a future meeting, whatever, what are the steps that happen after that? Obviously, there's something that needs to happen, right, between the concept plan and the final plan. What are those steps?
The concept plan is the first phase. If a concept plan is approved, the second phase is the final development or the final site plans. And that's when the applicant and developer can provide us with more technical drawings and a coordinated set of construction drawings that provide a lot more detail, because that's when they've gone out and they've done the additional studies and the geotechnical survey and that sort of thing. And then they will submit that to staff, and that is reviewed by all metro agencies, so stormwater and public works, et cetera. And then once, when we receive development plans, we ensure that any conditions that were put on the concept plan are carried through and are brought through and addressed with the final development plans. Once all agencies have reviewed and have given their okay on the final development plans, the next step is the final plat. And the final plat is when they create the lots and they become legal and they're recorded at the registrar's office. But if there's any other studies or any other requirements of the concept plan or final site plans, those would have to be addressed and approved before the final plat is recorded.
So when you say approved, would it ever come back to this commission, or is the approval just all on the staff administrative side?
It would likely be administrative unless there are some major change that ran counter to the Planning Commission, what was reviewed by the Planning Commission. It would stay administrative.
Thanks. I do think, and I think probably most of the commissioners feel like there are some questions regarding the tower safety issue. So I'm interested in hearing what some of the other commissioners have to say, but that's still an open item for me.
Councilman.
Can I ask the staff a question? Did you get a lead content report of the soil on the site, a concentration of lead poisoning as part of the submittal?
The soil studies aren't provided at this stage. The geotech survey, which is one of the the notes on the plans that the applicant added, will be done during the final site plan process, and that requires a geotechnical engineer to go out on site, approve the plans, and create a study that assures that he's reviewed all of the soils and the topo and all of that, and that will have to be provided with
I'm not asking for a geotechnical study.
Okay, a soil
This is
survey?
a very specific test that you do. So one thing you guys don't know about me is I was a lead abatement contractor, and I wrote specifications for, I'm a thing of surprises. But for you to be able to get a building permit on a house that is deemed to potentially have lead paint on it, you have to do a specific test that is done where you measure in a very unique way the concentration of lead dust on the soil. And that is, the reason to do that is that lead is very toxic not only to children, which it hurts their learning ability, but also to pets. So when you're going to have soil that is poisoned with lead, you're required to go through a study so you can assess the concentration and then be able to design whatever remediation you need to do, either abatement or remediation. So I think at this point, without having that test, we don't have enough information to make a decision about this proposal. So that is my concern about this.
And given the facts that which this is a lot of times these subdivision hearings are fact-finding mission, and so given those facts, I think it'd be very appropriate to add it as a condition as well. Commissioner, anything else?
Well, I don't think it's a condition. It's that we just don't know if it's feasible, and so that's why I think we should probably defer the project until the time where we can get that study.
Oh, and ask them to do the developer to do the study. All right, we'll take that in consideration. Commissioner Moore.
So I guess in that same vein, since we seem to all be in agreement about the tower, what's the most appropriate time for that? Could that happen after the concept plan is approved, or would that need to be a study beforehand?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I think, given the facts that we've heard tonight, between the tower and then the lead testing, we could have them do that before, if we defer it, while the developer do it while we defer, and they come back and update us on those things. Like, I think the director said, having an expert on the safety of the tower because ice did fall. We heard facts or alleged facts that, ice fell 700 yards away. And so I think probably a subject matter expert and a lead test might be appropriate things given the facts that we've heard. And require that in between now and the time it comes back if we defer it.
And that was going to be my next question, the time frame that we have.
Just to add on to that, and I appreciated that guidance, perhaps the question is to legal, to what extent should we weigh the tower radius, perceived or real risks associated with that in our subdivision review? There's probably a fair amount of case law associated with that, and that could put our legal counsel involved, and say, could you be prepared to give the commission legal advice tonight about how we should factor the questions that we heard around the tower?
Well, I'm sure there is quite a bit of case law as it relates to infrastructure and building in or around that infrastructure. I don't know that right offhand tonight, but.
So I want to give you the chance to say that. So perhaps the question would be if you were to say defer this for a meeting, you could, or two, you could ask that the council come back and give us a legal opinion. But we do have to remember that there is a rule about that we have to hear the subdivision within 60 days. And so there is a time constraint, but it's just these types of issues that I think are appropriate to ask for an expert to come back and give us feedback. It may be, and I don't want to give an opinion, it may be that there is a standard within the subregs for which we would weigh a question around a tower. So that would be helpful.
Or even an opinion from a court in Tennessee that have given us guidance on how to weigh these types of hazards or concerns, and I think that would be helpful. So we have 3 issues to answer now if we do defer. Commissioner Moore, anything else? Okay, Commissioner Sims.
I want to thank my fellow council. I learned so much from commissioners, from you guys. You just asked great questions. I often wondered why there were people that were on the commission for 10, 15 years. Well, I've been on it for 2, and I'm just beginning to grasp some of this. So I appreciate the fact that you come and have 2 minutes of conversation and try to get your hands around this incredible stuff. It's hard, and this is a hard case. Having said that, I want to thank Mr. Roy Dale too, because he is a punching bag a lot in our community for listening, but I actually believe that when we work together, we come up with a better product. So thank you for doing that. I do have a concern that, and this is philosophical along with Councilwoman, there are things that are legal but just not right. And I think this may be one of those situations where it's awful but lawful. And we are a country of laws, I hope. We certainly are trying to keep policies, and that is our role. We can't wade in like the council people do with emotions. We have to say this is either right or wrong. Having said that, subdivisions, we have 4 reasons we can turn down a subdivision. One is health, safety, and general welfare is up there. And the common definition of general welfare is that all of our laws contribute to general welfare, but the federal definition is much tighter than that. And it actually says that we can take into considerations the emotional and other kinds of concerns that people have when we are making and passing policy. And I really am concerned that with all the stuff that our commissioners have brought up, that we protect the general welfare. And the general welfare is really defined by federal law, which supersedes all of this. And so I want to be careful that we get all these questions answered. I'm not against this. I really respect how much work that everybody's put into this. I just have so many questions that have to do with health, safety, and general welfare that I'm not sure I can answer this question tonight. So.
Commissioner Haynes.
So while we're picking on legal counsel, I think one of the things I'd like to hear back from, it concerns me with the February 15th email from WSMV when they talk about ice landing 700 feet away, and then they send the letter on April 8th where they want us to give notice of this risk. Well, ultimately, it seems to me they're passing the buck. So if this were to get approved and houses on lots 27 through 30 get built, and we've got a public road within that 700-foot radii, who takes the liability if an icicle falls? So I think as you research this, we need to understand that. I don't like how WSMV has couched their responses. And I'm not a lawyer, so we need you to help us with that. Is someone from Public Works here? They're not.
I don't think they're here tonight.
So I'd love to understand the Public Works standards for slopes of roads, especially as we connect into Watts Lane. We've heard different information here. And if in fact that meets Metro standards or if it exceeds the standard slope of the road. Do we have an answer?
They have reviewed the plan as presented, and they have recommended approval of the plan. They will also get very detailed construction plans at the time with the final site plan with more information about the road grades. But they do have their standards. This has been reviewed. It will meet those standards. It will be further reviewed again with the final site plan.
So if in fact we're going to defer, I'd like someone from Public Works at the next meeting and to really dig into this. And then the gentleman mentioned his lot, the people are going to need land from him to make the road work. So we need that resolved.
I did look at that survey, and I do believe that, and based on some previous research that I had done, there is right-of-way in place. He is on the north side, I believe, of Watts Terrace, and this will be connecting into the south and going to the west, and there is public right-of-way in place.
And then someone mentioned the special policy from Hillwood dating back to 2004, 2005. Does that have any relevance as we look at this, or did Nashville Next then supersede that policy that was put in place years ago?
So the policy would very much govern our review of a zoning case. That would very much, if a developer asked for a change in entitlement, if they asked for a commercial property or they asked for some different residential, we would apply that policy. But for a subdivision, policy really only tells us what section of the subregs apply. And so we wouldn't look into detail at those standards. It's a document that helps us provide the advisory guidance to council under that other standard.
Okay. I know we've talked a lot about the ice on the tower. I'd also ask us to encourage us to study if the tower were to collapse. I know they generally have fall easements. Can we get more information on that to make sure that we're protecting the health and safety of the proposed neighborhood?
Do you want to pose the question to the applicant?
Sure. Can you answer that question?
I think it's important because I need to have some specific direction. Otherwise, I'm going to leave here. I'm not going to know exactly what to do. So, Larry Oakes is the vice president with Meredith who owns the tower. And we approached Mr. Oakes, and he told us that the fall was 350 feet. And so we added 150 feet to that. Do you need me to provide you anything more than that? I don't know. I don't know what else to do other than to go to the owner of the tower and ask them. As far as the ice is concerned, I don't know. I mean, I'll do my best to address that one, but that's not a finite thing.
Yeah, I don't think you can address that. I think legal counsel's got to address that.
Okay, well, so
WSMV said it fell 700 feet away.
Right. So I don't know, how to address that, but I want to make sure if you need something else more than me, I'm not sure I can provide you much more information on the fall zone of the tower other than what the owner of the tower, who's an engineer, conveyed to me. So that's the only reason I'm talking. Now, if you want to give me something specific.
The tower itself is how tall?
I have no clue. It's 1,050 feet, maybe.
So
Yeah, it's guided in many different levels, and so when a tower collapses, it doesn't fall over. It does it based upon where the guys are. So, but again, I contacted the owners of the tower, and that's all I could rely on, other than try to hire a structural engineer to go evaluate a tower. I think that's not realistic.
We might have to do that, but thank you, Mr. Duff.
I would also recommend at the next meeting, if we pass deferral, that someone from WSMV stay here to answer questions. And this is a relevant issue. From Meredith. With that, I would be willing to move a 2-meeting deferral.
Can we clarify, just for staff sanity and to also make sure we're clear with the community what we're looking at, what the issues are? Because there were a number of issues placed on the record, but what I'm hearing from the commission is there are a more narrowly defined group that you want more information on. So I think that would help give us direction so we can have a productive conversation when we next meet.
All right, I'll try to start and then y'all jump in. One is the health and safety of the tower relative to the icicles and the range of the distance of risk. Who's going to take that risk? Is that the city of Nashville? Is that WSMV? I think the lead paint in the soil.
Do a test.
Go ahead and do a test and tell us the results of that. 3 is this slope of the connecting road, and what is the slope? What are Metro standards there, and how is it going to connect into Watts Road? Those are my top 3 issues.
And then also, if there's any case law on safety issues for subdivisions, and that we discussed that with the attorney. Does that?
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioners, does that cover the concerns, or are there
I
others?
think the last one, I think definitely was important, is the case law and health and safety and how that can impact the implementation of the subdivision regulations. I did have a question about the very first speaker and some of what he brought up around the road easements, or I don't think I understood that completely, and I think it's in his document.
I think we have legal look at it and,
yeah.
and talk to the attorney that spoke if
So
he has
that-
additional questions.
Can we add that to your to-do list?
So much time.
Regarding the lead testing, I'm not talking about going to Home Depot and buying a kit and
No. We're not talking about going to Home Depot and buying a kit, but getting a
professional
lead test for the soil. Yeah. Commissioners, does that answer, so that's a proper motion. 2-meeting deferral. Is there a second? There's a second. With all of those conditions and get it answered.
Is 2 meetings sufficient time to get this, for legal to get this?
Well, what would be the 2-meeting deferral date? What would that be?
That would be May 23rd.
May 23rd.
How close does that put us to the 60-day? Can you check that?
I guess the question is the applicant agreeing to this? Well, he's going to have to agree, I think.
Well, I mean,
Yeah. I know that Mr. Dale's agreeable to this.
Well, my client's already very angry that I deferred this 2 times. So if I agree to deferral, I don't want to be counting against my 60 days. So are we done with the public hearing, or is that being closed?
No, I don't
Okay.
think, I think that we generally tend to open it back up with so many issues.
All right.
I mean, unless the commissioners don't agree with that, I think that the deferral motion would include to have to open the public hearing back up, and that's consistent with what we've done in the past when there are that many issues. That'll be part of the motion. Is that correct?
That's part of the motion. Leave the public hearing open.
Okay, that's a proper motion. Is there a second? And then we'll go back into discussion. Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Well, I was just following up on the 60-day question.
Yeah, what's
60 days would be June 24th. 60 days from today. So if no action is taken prior to June 24th, it's deemed approved.
okay. Yeah, we have.
The Tennessee Code annotated in regards to subdivision indicates that once a subdivision has been presented to the Planning Commission and taken up for action, that there is a clock that starts ticking, and that clock is a 60-day clock. If the Planning Commission fails to take action within 60 days of the date that it's first heard, then it is deemed approved. So June 24th is the 60-day, and that's per state law, Tennessee Code annotated.
So we just want to make sure that the deferral gives us enough time to
Yes.
have it back before us.
So it
before
doesn't
right.
be approved automatically, and that's, I
Right.
mean, that's why this 60 days is so important. And we want, we'll be completely upfront about that.
So if we hit May 23rd and legal is not ready and we defer it another meeting at that time, does that
Well,
get to
I mean, I
that
think
60-day issue
our first
again?
June meeting.
June 13th is the meeting immediately after the 23rd, but that would be the last possible.
If legal's not ready, we'll reach out to the applicant. They're going to want both sides of the best technical information on the record to make, so the commission will be able to make a decision.
Okay.
So it's in their interest to make sure that legal has all the facts that legal needs to make its judgment.
I think a 2-meeting deferral will be fine.
All right, so we have we're in discussion still. Any other discussion? The motion was 2-meeting deferral, open the public hearing back up, and address I think it's 5 issues that on the record that we had stated. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of 2-meeting deferral, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, 2-meeting deferral. We are going to take a recess for about 10 minutes. Oh, wait.
Sorry. Forgive me, this is my fault. Lisa, can you speak to the issue that we have an item that I believe the commission, if it were so inclined, could go ahead and vote as a matter of consent?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes, item 31, which
Councilman
was
Hager will be mad at us if we make him.
item 31, which had been on consent when we began the evening, got pulled off of consent as there were some owners that were concerned about being removed. Councilman Hager spoke to that.
Hey, if everybody would hold on 1 second, let's get through this real quick so we can do this.
Councilman Hager spoke to that, and he had agreed to remove several properties. One of the persons here still indicated that they wanted it off consent. Councilman Hager has done some more discussing, and they've agreed, and I think if you'll ask, there's no one here that is opposed to it now going back on consent.
Right.
Item 31.
So, Councilman, we really appreciate it. We didn't want to keep you late. I'm sorry. I almost
I appreciate
did
that.
it, and we apologize. So I want to ask, is anyone here on item 31? And so now, seeing no opposition, understanding that Councilman had talked to the person that had the concern is no longer here, is there a motion to put item 31 back on the consent agenda? There's a motion. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and item 31 is back on the consent agenda and
we
passed.
expect you to stay.
Okay. You want me to? Oh,
We're going to take a brief
32,
recess.
32's by consent too, right?
Yeah, that one was already on.
Okay, thank you.